Don't say his name.
Beetlejuice?
Saying his name 3 times is how you summon him.
Right. What if I say other words in between? Does that restart it?
Don't overthink it.
Or what if I broke it up into 2 parts? Like someone said, what's your favorite bug? Beetle. What's your favorite morning beverage? Juice.
This holds on. Florida State 0-3 for the second time in 5 years under Mike Norvell. Meanwhile, our ABC viewers waiting for Florida, Texas A&M. That game will start on ESPN. You will go to the Swamp after a great finish in Columbia. Chris Kirk, back to you.
Man, alive. Things started badly in Dublin and gone downhill for FSU. So this place rocking, trying to make it tough. As the Tigers take over at the 45. 3:46 to play. Need a touchdown to take the lead. Need a touchdown to take the lead. And that bowl game brought him from behind in the 4th quarter to win. Aiden Durham is back in the game. And he's got the football. And runs right through a tackle and picks up 10. Donald Fortune couldn't get him down.
This true freshman is a good-looking back. We're going to see more and more of him this year, this game, all the way to the finish line. Low center of gravity, balance. You know, he played in those 2 state championships at a state like Texas back-to-back years. Gives you an idea. Looks like Eamon Warren is down.
Trade in any phone in any condition for the new Google Pixel 9 with Gemini.
Show me a video that helps with my backhand. Thanks, Coach.
Only on Verizon.
The shootout game, and he ended up throwing for 395 and 3, and this is the end of it. Lacey, sign of things to come. Now the receiver's sitting that game out. Lacey makes a play, and look at this ball. This was reassuring to the LSU fans. The teammates knew that Nussmeier could do it. Daniel's obviously happy for his guy there. So he's trying it for his second career 4th quarter comeback within a 4-game span.
Whoever wins this game early in the year like this, these are the kind of games where you face adversity and you find a way to win that really springboard you into better weeks ahead. Whoever loses this game, boy, back to the drawing board, a lot to try to figure out what could have been kind of quotes after a game like this. So someone's about to find a way to win with 3.5 to go, and someone's going to be talking about what could have been. A lot at stake.
First down, Nussmeier back pedaling. Still got it and flips it downfield. Lacey well covered that time by DQ Smith.
Well, I think DQ Smith, who has some pretty good length there, got around him and is able to get his hand on that football. I mean, this is a pretty big challenge for a safety to be able to take on Lacey like this, and he did. That left hand worked through the football. That was a heck of a play there. You know, he played quarterback in high school, loves football, just keeps trying to get better every single week.
Quiet leader, communicator of that secondary. Hand it off inside. Durham tries to bounce it, and again, the first man doesn't get it down. Again, it's Fortune. Clean it up. And set down a 3rd and 6. Eva Williams eventually making the stop.
Under 3 to go, 3 timeouts, down 4. This is 4 down territory.
Gonna try to run for it again. It's Josh Williams this time. He doesn't get it. He gets a call that indicates they had 2 plays to try to get those 6 yards.
Absolutely. Still have, you can see the 2-minute timeout, the 3 timeouts, 2:20. They called that play to give them a better chance here on the 4th and short. They're going to go fast here.
Still need 3 yards. Gamecocks get a stop. 3 play. Nussmeier pitches it downfield. The Gamecocks are going to give him a first out of the penalty, but Lacey fights back, and they can decline it because he's got the football at the 10. Wildcat catch is good.
I want to see if it's good. They're definitely going to take a look at this. He gets pushed out of bounds. He was out of bounds for a while.
That was on the field, so was he forced out or was
Target set.
so the catch will count.
I thought his left knee might have been touching out of bounds when he caught it. That's a good job with a hard clap. Gets some canard off sides. Now he's got the free play, so he just takes a shot. But what I think we're going to take a really close look is he out of bounds? I mean, his left knee is out of bounds. That one's going to come back.
Yeah, the knee is down as he catches the ball out of bounds.
Transfers, including Kobe Savage.
But they will get the 5-yard penalty and a first down.
Betcher is amped. He is an
Great
Oregon native.
effort
He's
by
playing
Lacey.
out of his mind early.
That one should come back. Show the replay of the crowd is frustrated.
Bernard's had a great day, but here in this fourth quarter, he's had 2 tough plays. The block on Nussmeier that prevented the pick 6, and now here on a 4th and short, jumping on the side.
You see standing up. He's on his way.
He's a very patient guy, graduate.
McCoy broke free for a huge gain for Oregon State. There's a marker in. We'll see if it stands. It's a 42-yard run.
There's a reason Tosh Lapoy went back and watched his 49 scrambles as a vandal.
I don't have a target.
He knew McCoy's got he kept that one in the holster and used his legs that much.
Personal foul. Like a blindside block. Offense number 18. 15-yard penalty.
So that's a spot foul. That's worth noting. It's on Jeremiah Noga, the wide receiver. Trent Bray is incensed.
Yeah, and you're going to see Noga eventually.
It's been a wild ride to get here. Now, who can keep their poise, who can avoid the mistake, and who can make the play in the final 2 minutes and 3 seconds.
He can dance, and you're going to see the block come in.
Let's use game with the Trojans. Vegas came down to moments like this.
But a big play to first down, nonetheless.
Most of the time, it's avoiding a mistake as much as making a play.
If you read lips, you may have seen Trent Bray.
BK probably went with sunscreen today. It's a hot day.
There was a comment maybe about fertilizer on the sideline on the penalty.
Yeah, and it also might be, I played in
So you got to get the ball in the end zone. Have it first down at the 33.
After review, it's an incomplete pass.
And you're going to protect Hayward on that blind side.
However, the 5-yard onside penalty will be enforced. It results in a first down for LSU, 33-yard.
So time is no issue. They won one more play, then we get the 2-minute timeout. They've got all 3 to work with. So what do you like if you're Joe Sloan calling the plays? Nussmeier engineering things.
I think it's continuing to work the middle of the field. Caden Durham, continue to use him. Run the ball out of the backfield.
They play pass to He loses his feet, he loses contain, and the chains are moving. And that's not the chain sauce. Although I think we're going to hear those today. You have to believe that they'll be in stock.
Walker in the slot left. Their most consistent receiver. McCoy looked him off. Broke the other way.
Breakout tailback to the right of Nussmeier.
End of Wells.
Fake it to him. Nussmeier sets up, loops it downfield. It's Lacey, who makes a catch and sets him up first and goal.
A play you love Wells to make here as a receiver, but when there's so much traffic around
What a throw with the pressure on the line. What an
Are they saying he didn't have full control before he went out? It looked like he certainly grabbed it.
Now a couple have gone
Well,
the right way.
it's really about completing the process of the catch. He got 2 feet, maybe 3 feet down, but he didn't complete the process of the catch. Dagger concept. He's coming from the right over to the left. Look at his length. Does a good job climbing, holds it. Now he has it with one hand, and the ball came out. After he came down, one hand loses the football. That's why you keep it in 2 hands.
They're just going to get to green grass. And McCoy's got enough experience, Jason. 25 starts under his belt. This moment should not be too big for him. And Reddix and Walker, these tight ends do a nice job of finding space as outlets.
They'll bring one of those tight ends, Terry, to the formation right there. Anthony Hankerson in for the first time. And
see the all-new, reimagined Nissan Case.
Let's take a look at our Get More game plan.
$5 all-you-can-eat pancakes are back at IHOP for a limited time. Or free with select combo purchase. Now you can get stacks on stacks. At IHOP, we don't just put food on your plate, we put a smile on your plate.
If your business needs a new application,
for Oregon State, keep the pressure on. Not just defensive pressures, but the pressure of expectation. Get this game to the second half and make them feel the weight of being a top 10 team. Like 2 years ago.
Choose your game face. Gillette, the best a man can get.
Torn between a flame-grilled quarter-pound king and an original chicken sandwich? Satisfy both your cravings at Burger King with our 2 for $11 mix-and-match deal. Choose one of each or double up on either. 2 for $11 mix-and-match on now at BK only for a limited time.
when we set out to light beer, there came a moment of truth. When we had to choose great taste for 90 calories, we chose both. Tastes like another time.
When you drive a Jeep, getting there isn't half the fun. It's all the fun. Jeep Adventure Days are here. Get into a Jeep Wrangler, the most capable Wrangler ever. Or Jeep Compass, where high-tech meets trail-rated capability. Jeep Adventure Days, your adventure awaits. Get up to $8,700 in MSRP discounts on Grand Cherokee or 0% financing for 60 months, 3.85% APR. Plus, eligible customers get $1,000 loyalty cash on most models.
We are the next generation, the future.
Did you hear that? We are going to be aggressive.
You know, I see you wrestling because it was an actor.
Ladies, it's time to cut these ponies loose. Offense number 66. 5-yard penalty.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Remains 4th down.
Grand start, Rob. That's
You're
going to be the
badass.
fifth-year senior right there. And kind of like the first play of the game. Right, we saw a couple Beavers overzealous to get started. The fifth-year senior knew he wanted to create movement.
Texas A&M, that game
created 5 yards the other way and forces you into this attempt.
Everett Hayes missed twice against San Diego State from 38 and 54. This is from 43 for the
crucial review here. Lee Skevin, Mitchell Watkins, replay official in consultation with the video center. And, of course, we'll bring in Bill Lamagne. So Lacey makes the catch here. 1-2, gets 2 feet down. The shot's delivered by DQ Smith. He goes to the ground, and as he goes to the ground, the ball makes contact and comes loose. Bill, explain what the key issue is for these replay officials.
That was right into the line. Uyangala legs, Caldwell, Burst, they were all there. Possibly Trent Bray gets nothing.
From the views we're seeing, and you guys know all about incomplete pass.
So the football Geico has faster claims 24/7 right on the Geico app.
To file a claim, just tap.
Just tap right here to upload pictures, customer.
So I gain on the first 9 bases.
Sure. Vicky, to track your status, just click. Super easy.
They're connecting with the mannequins.
You're doing it right everywhere.
You're making a football move.
Tap,
I don't know
scroll.
what a football fan is supposed to think of that.
I'm
One
cramping.
to the next, it could be different.
For saving you,
I overdid it.
Danny, what are you doing up there?
Turning upfield.
Now you're not necessarily in a hurry, right? If you're South Carolina, or if you're LSU to South Carolina with the 3 timeouts.
New and existing customers can pre-order iPhone 16 Pro on us, only on Verizon.
2 tight ends. Durham is the bat.
Blocked from watching the big match? Save the day by using the Bank of America customized cash rewards card and choose to earn 3% cash back on online purchases, like live streaming.
5-hour internet.
It's a very dangerous
You could be a tailgate champion.
Again, he's a quarterback with a lot of confidence, but this is a scary throw.
Even if you are
it back into coverage as he rolls right. Ball's got to come out right now, right here. Instead, he waits, and then throws it back into the teeth of that defense. Did he ever catch a break there for that ball not being picked off by DQ Smith?
Jersey Mike's freshly slices and right in front of you. You can't fake that. You can fake my outfit. You can fake these punches. You just can't fake a freshly sliced jersey. So maybe authentic Jersey Mike's is 1956. It's a Jersey Mike's thing.
Tubi is proud to be free for the teachers illuminating the minds of our children. But it's also free for kids who skip class to throw rocks at windows. Because Tubi is free for everyone, and we mean everyone.
There's a lot happened here. Third-ranked Ohio State here. And maybe a lot still to happen. So second down, ball right at the 2. Finish. It's been the frustration for Brian Kelly.
All right, here's the block, and in fact, he kicked it into his own offensive line.
He had some struggles down inside the 5-yard line, trying to run the ball.
Great start. A little head start on the 4th and 1.
With all 3 timeouts.
Some penetration, but an awfully low kick that just never got started.
Dylan Gabriel, who's been extraordinarily
got to hurry here. Brian Kelly sees that, and they spend a timeout. The Gamecocks student section came running down from the upper deck down the ramp. They're ready to rush the field here.
52 starts for Dylan Gabriel. His deep ball is
I get a feeling that there's a few twists.
I want to see this more offense
before they try to jump over the edge and self-made. I think they'll win.
Simplify. They're going to stick with one
This minute 22.
And you'd like to see him play as Bo did with just tremendous
like I said earlier, think about
They shoot the
all
light
the
with the
adversity
sacred
that both teams have faced. And to be in position to have a chance to win it, despite that, it's every lesson that you try to teach your team in the offseason. Like I said, one's going to get out of here, learn and grow, and another one's going to get out of here.
I don't think you're going to see the rotation.
Just frustrated by mistakes that cost them a game.
LSU is lost in this place. Last loss in '94 was in Baton Rouge. 1930 before this place was built. South Carolina got a home win. That's the only time it's happened. Only 2 wins in series history. Yeah, it's been one of those wild, sloppy, gritty games. Both teams have made some tremendous plays. They've made some huge mistakes. Now it comes down to this.
Just give Dylan Gabriel
LSU
against a
2 yards away from taking the lead.
Nobody gets home, and you could see he can scan. He can scan.
Exactly doesn't have a starting quarterback.
For the check down.
Running the football into the teeth for the defense has not worked out so far down here for LSU.
Gabriel right
Williams in the backfield.
On target, Tez Johnson, who spins away from 2.
Messmeyer on the move again.
31-yard line.
Goes to the end zone. Backcourt incomplete. Off the hands of C.J. Daniels.
Defend on these RPOs, right? It's run action up front. Everybody looks like run. You can see the front sell to it.
Man coverage. Good job of trying to work him back into the corner. They used Tyron Lacey that time as a decoy. He was there, open, just missing. 3rd and goal.
So now you got 2 plays to get the 2 yards.
Second and short. Oregon State's defense has some real work to do on this drive. Thomas Collins moves outside.
Yeah, I'm going to try to add a little bulk there. Oregon playing with tremendous tempo right here. And then Kane, the veteran safety, the 50-year guy in the back.
This time
going to have to be an eraser.
reach Pater, and they take the lead with a minute 12 to play.
Tight end Ferguson downstairs. Gabriel throws. Tez Johnson switches direction.
Josh Williams runs the rotation. He's seen the talented freshman Durham get the end zone a couple of times, and he joins the party.
You tell me, Benetti, does anybody even smell Dylan Gabriel? Is there any Oregon State defender?
No.
And when he has time to set his feet like that, maybe it's because he's a lefty, but man, does he throw some tight spiral line drives.
Last year at Auburn down 17, but it is not very common in this conference.
Gabriel again whistling at far side. That's Evan Stewart's first catch.
On the
road
road
from the 5 that they go second and goal.
LSU has not been able to run the football a lot inside this area. They go too tight to the right, and then they're going to motion the receiver. When they're done motioning the receiver, look how many defenders are on that side of the ball over here, right? You're going to hand the ball off. You're going to work back to the backside. So a good job of using the formation to get the defenders out of position. And there aren't a whole lot of bodies on that backside to have to worry about. You go behind Will Campbell, kick out block there on Edmond. You're able to run effectively there inside the 5-yard line, inside the 5 for that touchdown.
Yeah, you went short. All-American left tackle, future first-round pick to make that day. He takes care of it.
Take the first couple weeks, been a lot of disappointment.
The second half, the play selection without the healthy Sellers, 15 runs and 3 passes, 12 yards passing in the second half.
It was that sequence. See what they do here. It looks like they're going to swing the gate.
South Carolina was trying
to get Atticus
their lead to the field goal.
The former Beaver
in the
who was
pocket.
being serenaded.
So he's brought down. Awkward twist of the ankle. And that was perhaps the game-changing moment. And now,
7-0 Oregon.
Robbie Ashford
opening drive.
Presumed to be back out there trying to create a miracle.
Yeah, you wonder, as you prep your starting quarterback Sellers, who's inexperienced for these kind of moments, you wonder how many reps Ashford as a backup early in the year has gotten. You usually run your ones on a Thursday practice in a 2-minute drill. Then you run your twos.
If you can't see what's behind all this, how do you
an opportunity for him. All they need is 3 points. Got to get to at least inside at the 35-yard line to have a shot.
I agree. About 40 yards here to give Herrera a reasonable chance. He got 3 timeouts. That's not the issue.
Or someone says,
quick drop.
Then you just know
Ashford
what it was, what it is, and what it always will be.
Because when you're an original, 8 yards and you think they spend one of the timeouts right here.
They are not.
There's nothing like a Wendy's
Give him
Frosty.
a chance here. Try to get LSU maybe on their heels. Remember, with Ashford, it's quick throws. Get the ball
it's
out,
only
or he's got to scramble and go.
Wait, what?
From the
one and only Frosty is
and
a
he's wrestled down. They
Gotta
take
be
a sack.
Wendy's.
It's Braden
Another progressive
Swinson,
home and auto bundle
and
fully
that
protected
is
from the
a
unexpected.
damaging play inflicted by this LSU defense 8 times.
Oh, relax. You have to say it at least 2 more times.
You just need to get pressure, keep eyes on the football, and like I said, with a backup quarterback without a great deal of experience throwing, you want it's either for South Carolina a simple, quick read and throw ball out fast, or a takeoff and a scramble. If he's sitting back there, hitch, that's playing right in the hands of that LSU defense.
Braden Swinson, one of the 16 portal players that LSU brought in from Oregon. You can see the speed. He's been invading the backfield, and boy, after Ashford scrambled there, they got a positive play, didn't spend the timeout, looked a little frantic, and the last thing you want is to take a sack there. That's the 5th by LSU's
Fox College
defense.
football sponsored by Wendy's new Saucy Nugs. Get the $5 Big Noon Saucy deal in the Wendy's app now. Terms apply. So they first played in 1894. The next year, the coaches were the officials, and it was 44-0. The year after that, it was 2-0 Oregon. It was a dead ball era. And then they played a lot of 0-0 games. They already outscored in 1983. Because of the opening drive touchdown for the Ducks.
That was everything you wanted, as you said perfectly. And just watching the interior of these 3 guys, and in particular your left guard, Schroeder, making his first start. He had to make a lot of ball.
He steps
when
up
teams
with
stunt,
so much
Jason, when you
pressure
see those
on him.
linemen stunt,
Use
sometimes
his
it's
feet
hard
to
for
keep the
O-linemen to
play
want to follow it. They don't stay square and balanced. He's played a lot of ball. 4 years at East Carolina. He stays balanced. They keep their eyes up. They catch that stunt. And then I really like Cornelius driving that tackle right into the ground as well. I think that O-line heard for the last couple weeks how much of a problem they've been, and they went about fixing it on that opening drive.
It's impossible not to hear it, especially in this rivalry. Sappington drives it, and Card will let it go through the end zone. Oregon State's opening drive was 11 plays and 447. They got a 42-yard scramble.
Second time out.
This
run
defender
game wants
steps
to
up
get
on
some
the
points.
underneath
They'll touch it
route,
next.
and there's the throwing lane. nicely behind that look for Jacobs on that deep crosser. About, what do we say, about 10, 15 yards away from having a shot here.
Worse than 15. Jacobs. Rashford steps up and is going to be brought down right around field goal range at the 32. It is a first down. So
great effort there at the end of that play. We know about his quickness. That time, he said he's going to lower his shoulder. He's fighting for every single yard to give Herrera a shot. He's fighting for every single yard to give Herrera a shot.
Across the middle, it's incomplete. So they still have the one timeout down to 18 seconds.
There's the freshman Bennett, unable to hold on to that football.
They try it from here, Kirk. It'd be about a 50-yarder. So right about the maximum distance in pregame warm-up that Herrera was making.
Yeah, they need 5-6 yards here to feel like he's got a legitimate shot. Do you go to Sanders here, slip him out of the backfield, or does maybe Ashford run the football off that scramble again? There's Sanders.
And Sanders doesn't get much. Whit Weeks gets him down, and they will have to spend their last time out here.
Let it run down, use that last time out.
And Alex Herrera did not kick a field goal before this season. Kicked some PATs, did some kickoff duty last year. It was a 5-man competition in camp. He was going to leave, except Mitch Jeter, the guy he backed up, ends up transferring to Notre Dame. So Herrera says, well, I'll stick around and try to win the job. He does. And now he's in a position that he hasn't been in his college career before.
Left hash, 48 yards out, was making him from 50 towards this end of the field in pregame. Probably has the range, probably from 55. So it's well within his range. LSU has the 2 timeouts, so we'll see if they end up trying to ice him here and think about it, or if they just let it go.
Local guy, played some quarterback in high school, Spring Valley, here in Columbia. You don't see much wind on the flags of the goalpost, but it has been very windy, swirling around the top of the stadium. And after all the back and forth, all the lead changes, momentum changes, crazy plays, Herrera will have a 49-yard attempt, and try to freeze him with the timeout, as you suggested, to force overtime. That mulligan, that didn't count. Just get that out of your system.
Right.
Man, I mean, we said a lot had happened, and you had the feeling a lot more was going to happen. LSU eventually did punch it in to take that lead, and you frankly didn't give Ashford a great chance backed up to make the pass plays to get down here to give the kicker a chance to force overtime. But to his credit, he did.
He did. After that sack, he thought, oh boy, this thing is going to be tough to do because they just haven't shown much from the passing game. But that scramble and then the vision downfield to hit that crossing route gave him life and gave him hope. Ashford as a backup deserves a lot of credit, man, for at least giving him a shot here.
Hometown kicker try to be a hero to at least extend this game and force OT. Drives it and just misses it. And LSU survives for a huge comeback victory on the road and breaks South Carolina hearts. This time, LSU is able to finish.
You could give these different
just barely,
options a shot.
but this was a gritty performance by a team that was on the ropes early.
Absolutely. Says a lot about LSU, their character. They got some breaks, let's face it. People are going to go back on X, and they're going to look at, oh, how is this not a call? How's that not a call? Everyone's going to talk about that. But at the end of the day, disheartening. I told you, whoever loses this game, this is a tough one. Sitting there at 2-1.
pass on the opening drive. 3rd down and 4. McCoy throwing to Hankerson off the bobble. Did he ever put it away? No, incomplete. Bryce Betcher again made a play.
Well, that was such a good job by McCoy. You talked earlier about him just driving the bus. Don't go crazy. Run and see that blitz. You get it right to your outlet, and he puts it in the spot for Hankerson. But you see the eyes. All young running backs, receivers know it. Secure it first. You want to get that first down.
Intended for Jaden Thomas.
So you know what do you have? Remember, you're coming to the line of scrimmage. If you're Riley Leonard and you're going, all right, I know what I got. I got bump and run. I'm going to go back shoulder throw. Got a big receiver. Corners at a disadvantage.
Probably the same way they got
with the throw.
Teron Grant was in coverage, and it forces 3rd down and 8. Finally,
or if it takes you places that
woken up a little bit for their defense.
Karlaftis is in the middle now, playing the middle linebacker spot.
They're going to keep it on the ground. Quick opener up the middle, and it's going to be a 1st down run for Aeneas Williams.
So you almost think when they ran the ball like this in this part of the field that this was a 3rd down call, anticipating if they didn't make it, they would go for it on 4th down. They didn't need 4th down.
Aeneas Williams' college debut a week ago, and now he's got himself a 1st down run up the middle, number 20.
You know the Irish fans are going,
this is one of those challenging ones, and I was listening to my prayer earlier on the game in Wisconsin.
But they have done their job so far against this
if this is called a catch first,
Purdue defensive line.
Leonard, quick throw to the outside.
On the field,
Points it again to his tight end.
Raritan has no control. He has no control. He gains control there. Does the ball move anymore, Jason? From right there.
Declare it man to man.
His foot is on the ground.
A nice little fake. Get it inside. Off of a linebacker one-on-one. You like your matchup with your H-back type against a linebacker. Good call again.
He's a big target. Raritan 6'7", 250, as you saw. Shrouth on the way to the locker room on the cart, and that's not good. We'll try to get an update for you. 2nd down at a yard for Leonard in the offense at the Purdue 28-yard line.
2nd short. You could go deep. They haven't had a touchdown pass yet.
Sideline, 1st down. Thomas still going down to the 15.
Mike Pereira, you're watching this. What did you see?
I think it was going to be something bigger than that, but Purdue came with a corner blitz, so they had to get hot on it, well executed, and Thieneman does not make the tackle.
Yeah, he missed it and whiffed it. It's a pickup of 13. As number 13 delivers that sidearm toss out to Thomas.
It does feel like Notre Dame is just dialing whatever they want to do. Run inside, run outside, run the quarterback, quick slants, everything they want.
First down at the 15.
That's Noga. He's trying to throw it back. He's got McCoy.
Love.
And his throw is
straight up the middle for about 6 or 7 more.
That was as pretty as the 1983 game.
You know what that was? An old
we work our way under 3 minutes in the first quarter. Dominated right now by the Fighting Irish.
And you kind of want it the other way.
Keep pulling those guards and backside H and filling the hole. One of the things you like to do against a man-to-man team that's attacking is run that counter. So far, Notre Dame has lived all that off that counter action, or whether they do it and slip it to the tight ends or H-backs.
Tight ends, 2 of them on each side right now. Backfield empties, and it's
together at Oregon State. Linebacker and quarterback.
He's got it 1st and goal around the 3.
I don't even think they were faking the pass to the right. That was quarterback power right there.
At the bottom of the pile, Jabbar Muhammad, the transfer.
Yeah, nobody's faking passes. This is quarterback counter.
It's 3rd down.
Just follow that tackle, nap into the hole.
Secure that
nap. The freshman's had a couple good blocks.
That's what you want to do with a young player, though. The hardest thing to do is 3rd and 8 pass blocking. You'd love to pull around and hit somebody when you're a young player.
Defense on that 2nd down run.
Jeremiah Love's going to empty the backfield. Riley Leonard, 1st and goal at the 3. Blitz coming. He's going to go straight up the middle. Irish touchdown. Riley Leonard.
First down. Short set and a laser.
That was too easy.
Target from McCoy Walker.
What did he say to us yesterday? How does he win versus press?
Feet, his feet.
I'm not going to outrun these guys. They're going to be faster. Jabbar Muhammad's an awesome player. There is, by the way, a penalty flag down But he said, it's all about my feet off the jump. That's when I got to win. He did it right there.
This is Oregon's official sideline warning. Sideline warning on Oregon.
Can you imagine what this rivalry would have been like in terms of littered with flags if they called sideline warnings every time they could have over the years?
Rich Brooks, Jerry Pettibone, and Mike.
The first one went 75 yards. This went 82, capped by Leonard's second rushing touchdown of the year. Back in 30 seconds.
Inside run, Hankerson is bottled up.
Iron that combines a forged body with a forged AI smart face, capable of generating exceptional speed and feel. All while delivering outstanding spin consistency for pinpoint distance control.
Hankerson rummaging for very close to the line to gain. He's going to be just short. Betcher the tackle. Nice run.
Yeah, and this is all right here. This is Jermaine Terry. I think their best offensive player, along with their left guard, Josh Gray, and they get movement and get and win at the point of attack.
They are going to give him the spot on the first down. We'll see if replay wants to look at that, too. They looked like he was going to be just short.
Pretty good hand plant right there. I think that was the difference in that.
It's going to be the call. I think you might have hooked him a little bit on that right hip.
Pass interference. Defense. Number 2. Automatic first down.
After he broke up the field, Allen went to the inside. Denson wasn't ready for it. And I think he was just trying to prevent a touchdown, sticking his arm out there and trying to grab some of that jersey.
First penalty on Florida today. A&M already with 4 for 30 yards, but the confidence they have in Marcel Reed and that he has in himself. Remember the bowl game last year? He went for 361 yards passing. First down. He's going to run it himself, and a flag comes down as he goes nowhere. Sharkie Denson coming around from that nickel position for tackle.
Illegal shift offense. Number 6 and number 5 are moving at the same time. 5-yard penalty. First down.
What we're seeing in Texas A&M and Mike Elko is the aggressive play calling, throwing the ball down the field. Through 2 games, Mike Elko's offense, they only had 2 completions of 20 or more yards. Their receivers have not been able to get behind DBs consistently. And Joe, it's hard to have to go 10, 12, or 14 plays like Texas A&M did on the opening drive to score touchdowns.
First and 15 after the penalty.
Who's calling for help?
Going to keep it inside with Daniels, and Daniels slithers his way before he is tackled by just a spoon.
For the majority, I think this Gator front 7 has done a pretty good job so far against the run. They are very, very big on the defensive line. It is really hard to get push and to get movement right now. You got big Desmond
what they wanted to at the outset.
450
you can see hands on hips
on the field. And generally, wherever that guy lines up,
Field hands on hips, Derek Harmon hands on hips, breathing heavy. That's what they wanted. They wanted those big D linemen to have to play 8, 9, 10 plays on the drive.
Anderson back in. They'll run one more play before the end of the first. The Walker motion. Straight ahead.
Hankerson beats down the door. Touchdown Beavers.
Great job of Reed finding his target here. Just going to be running down the seam. There are 3 Gator defenders, and nobody covers him. This is a coverage bust on the back end. They let him go completely scot-free. And that might be the easiest touchdown pass of Marcel Reed's career.
Center, Cheech does a wonderful job. The left guard Gray even better.
29-yard touchdown catch.
That's on both sides today, Mr. Benetti.
And Marcel Reed, Billy Napier's team, in a hole early on. He gets the tap on the shoulder.
Well, what Oregon State knows is playing keep away. Nearly 10 minutes of the first quarter, the Beavers have had the ball.
He was able to find Thor.
A rivalry that really
was for the Aggies. Comes to America to go to a summer football camp.
Makes you romantic about college football, even so far.
Chance, and now he delivers with this. The strike from Reed here in the swamp. And give him early 10-zip. Texas A&M.
Do the Ravens have it this year? Can Lamar get it done?
They're trying to write us off. Y'all got it?
Good to see you, champion. I've been tracking this one since it crawled out of its hole. Sarathi will see my son. I will slaughter every Nerubian in my path to keep them from harm.
I will always try.
I thought we agreed you'd stay in Dornagal.
I heard stories of the Irathi as king. I was curious.
Half-minute drive.
No greater feeling in an offensive huddle than imposing your will. And knowing, hey, that defense knows
between
what...
treatments with Vabysmo. Ask your doctor.
Oh, you don't know? It's Faye. That move your feet. Taste can't be beat. That late night treat. Faye.
Penalty numbers are really starting to add up for Youngstown State. I know talking to you guys during the break, it's 8 penalties for 81 yards for the Penguins, just 3 for 30 yards for Duquesne. That's been part of the story here today. Brungard, handoff, Deshaun Watley, the sophomore. We got a marker though behind the play. Watley's got a big game, but I think it's coming back.
Add on another.
With the strength of that Oregon defense. Last play of quarter number 1 in a tie ball game. Jordan James had the touchdown. It's Terrence Ferguson, the tight end, who rumbles to about the 30-yard line. Is this entertaining enough for you?
Pretty good.
It's the end of the first quarter.
Feel like they still don't really like each other?
And I thought it was cute you said it would only be 3 hours. Good luck.
We're tied at 7. Long way to go.
Doug.
And if we win, we get to tell you how Liberty Mutual customizes car insurance, so you only pay for what you need.
Isn't that what you just did?
Service!
Stand back, I'm gonna show ya. How Doug and Lee will roll ya. You know you gotta live it if you wanna win.
Time out.
Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
I turn it up another notch.
HG1 Rewards, 19 hotel brands, 6,000 global destinations, one loyalty program that lets you guest how you guest.
Wait, isn't this for kids?
And for me.
Adults. Pedialyte. Really?
I went crazy, huh?
Come on, really?
Really?
Huh. Grown-ups. All right, then.
It's too hot to have this conversation.
Too hot.
Right. Well, when you're feeling super hot or super not, it's Pedialyte. Yes, really.
It's a good day to start something new. To brush away gray in 5 easy minutes. To put yourself out there and always put your best face forward. Just for men, mustache, and beard.
So, I like honey barbecue, you like honey barbecue.
What is happening?
It's Belladar, our star. It shifts between the light and this. The Dawn Towers hold back the darkness with the sacred flame, but the light always returns.
The stars are devoured, and they light a candle. You know how this ends, Illyria. Inevitably, the void consumes everything.
Show yourself, monster!
You know where to find me. Deeper in the darkness.
There's a
Out there about 700 pounds, and Chisholm's got one shot, and that is to split those two and go get the tackle for loss, and he does just that.
Missed the first half last week for targeting there. He went low in a beautiful tackle.
Sometimes only moments.
A little bit of empty here, doing this to try to simplify the protection at the line of scrimmage. Now they'll bring Whittington back in.
We will travel by air.
Speed option here.
Monsters
Dylan
arising.
Gabriel.
Down the sideline. He's winning the foot race. Gabriel touchdown with a vapor trail from 54
To live under
yards.
constant threat of shadow. How do you do it?
When night falls, the army enacts the shadow code.
We talk about the chess match and give Will Stein the checkmate right here. That motion brings it back in, and you're going to see the left side of the line, Connerly seal it. And all you want as a quarterback at speed option is one-on-one. So that whole formation and empty, you get a look. And then you bring your back in to get another look. And once Gabriel sees it's one-on-one, big time.
And now on the extra point, they're going to end up with Kenyon Sadiq into the end zone.
I think they found that play in the 1933 matchup between the two.
You think that's when it was from?
Kind of looked that way. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to line up in this like swinging gate thing, and you're going to stand all sideways.
Third and 12.
Snap it to you. Honestly, I think I saw that snap in the 08 matchup of these two.
Get out of the library.
Take it down.
Offside. Defense number 8. 5-yard penalty.
Ran through that.
Third down.
What? Thank goodness.
It's Christopher Ross,
Can't watch
one of the
football
Texas
without
transfers.
mosquitoes.
He clearly steps over, and Ariante Ursary, the experienced vet he is, all you have to do is react to it while that defender is in the neutral zone or on your side of the ball, and that's how you get 5 yards.
Well, Nevada has 3 penalties today. Remember, they had 14 last week.
I'm out of here.
You know, Coach Ron, it's nice to finally have you 3 times. Gives you a chance to reflect on the important things.
Really made Jeff choke hot. Addressing his team in and out. The intended receiver.
But Affleck gives people money to help close that gap.
TJ Williams. Williams for Minnesota. Crawford making the play. And so fourth down again for Minnesota. Suddenly their offense
Get
has
help with
stalled
expenses
a
health
little bit.
insurance doesn't cover. Find an agent, get a quote.
Fantastic coverage. Play it goes. Michael Coates Jr. with the pass breakup on the sideline, and there Pete Crawford with the pass breakup. Coming into this game, this Nevada defense had 17 passes defense. They play a lot of man coverage.
Take a vacation,
Man, can they be trusted in
or
it?
just a weekend drive with the windows down. Whatever you do.
Remember, the first punt for Mark Crawford was 46
The 2024
yards. Right
Kelly
about
Eagles
at his
KW.com
average.
best overall EV and hybrid brand. So act now. Buy online, reserve from select dealers, or hurry
Bellin
into the
with the
Honda
fair catch
Summer
call.
event.
Right at the 32-yard line. Well, we will take a timeout. It is 6-0 Minnesota here in Minnesota.
This, or this?
$5. Legendary.
These deals? Prime time?
Ah, yeah.
Only at KFC.
Unleaded 88 can save you big at the pump.
And it helps cut
It's
emissions.
safe for our home.
If it's safe for your car.
trips and give
As long as it's a 2001 or newer,
we handmade them
you're good to go.
Speaking of good, it's made with corn, which is good for local farmers.
Somebody hand me that socket.
Wait.
It's you.
Does anyone have a reason not to choose unleaded 88? Thank you.
Whatever. Choose unleaded 88. Engine smart, earth cut.
Whoa, hold up. Someone just got BOGO free Blizzard treats. Only in the DQ app. That someone could be you, but only for a limited time. BOGO free any size Blizzard treats. Get it now in the DQ app. DQ.
What have you prepared for us?
Edric Smoked Sausage Chef. Welcome back to Fox College Football, sponsored by Geico.
Smoked sausage will heat up. Just add
Quick drive for Oregon. And the one positive of playing this game in September is it's not like 26 degrees and frozen. It's a beautiful day, and Dylan Gabriel
Why not
used
buy a
that
soccer
track
team? Got one.
to
Dude,
speed
why
down
would they
the
ask why?
sideline for
What are
the
they even
second
talking about?
Oregon score.
What they're really asking is, why don't you quit football? They don't understand that you live and breathe for football. Because you're Tom freaking Brady.
Back to the touchdown.
You know, one of the advantages, Jason, of 52 starts like Dylan's made, a lot of communication at the line of scrimmage. He knows what they're running here, speed option. And here's the key. Here is this motion. And once Whittington comes back into the box right here, everybody knows it. Okay, I'm blocking down, and I got one-on-one with this fella right here. That's it. That's the whole play. And once he goes, and you get a great block outside by Evan Stewart as well, it is a house stall. But that motion is declaring that one-on-one situation, the key. And when you started 52 games, you could slow it down, and then you could speed it up for 6.
And with all that's gone well at the quarterback position for Oregon, they're going to change for this drive. Javaris Johnson is in, the freshman for Oregon State, more of a running quarterback. And here's Jam Griffin leaning for a nice gain on first down to set up second down at 3.
Can I say one more thing, too? That question that Allison asked Dan Lanning about what you've got to do defensively. Just get off the field on third down. You've got to start defeating blocks. They have not done a good enough job of that these first 2 weeks.
Tempo here, Bird flowing with it, and it's going to be a first down once again for Jam Griffin. So what does that look like, Rob, if we're watching at home?
I mean, it's for fun. In Birch, when you are locked up, then you have got to shed that block. It's not just enough to have position on gap sound, as you'll hear people say.
Now taking on this opponent from the Mountains and Nevada
Too experienced. Put your hands on guys and throw them, disengage, so there can be more tackles that you're going to attack. One good enough last week.
Part of the course this season is holding firm. Certainly could use some help from the offensive side.
Put his body on top of the football. Betcher was closest. It'll be second down.
Offense needs to help
New
out.
New center, young quarterback. This ball comes pretty hot, right between the legs.
And push back. He's still got about 3 yards left to go. It's a gain of 3.
Such a young quarterback with all of the mechanics going on around and the new center. I understand why they do it, because he's got tremendous
the pinstripe bowl game.
They'll go under center here, that's for sure. It's a loss of 7.
Both of Coleman Bryson has been fun to watch for anyone who follows this program. You got the big six, then you show up at a couple of spring practices, training camps. You knew he was going to put it all together eventually, and this year, maybe that year. He's played fantastic.
Rotating free safety here this year. 3rd and 3 as the crowd is coming here at Huntington Bank Stadium.
Absolutely not. You don't oversimplify it. You do what you do. You've been good on third down.
Lewis to throw. Pressure coming.
Spins away from
trouble.
This is where Oregon typically
Jack Henderson gets up for the sack.
Or mix it up.
Another low snap. Watson rolling. They get a hand on him, and he's going to go down. That was Devin Jackson, the linebacker, who got a piece of him, and then Winston took him out of bounds. 4th down.
You asked the question, what does defeating loss look like? Watch this right in the middle. Watch Harmon just win right away. See, get my hands on the center, and then I get through that line. Now, it's a little easier to do on 3rd and 11 in a passing situation.
How was that snap? I mean, he juggled it. It looked like low at first, but watching it again, it looked like it wasn't that bad of a snap.
There's a lot of things moving around real fast for a young quarterback.
Special teams was the game winner last week for Oregon against Boise State. As Johnson back to receive, we'll see if he gets a chance. The answer to that is maybe. Here he goes. Hemmed in for a moment. Can they keep him caged is the question. And he dances for a couple after a 50-40-yard punt. Last we saw Dylan Gabriel, he was going as far as that punt just did, down the sideline. 15-7 Oregon, and the Ducks have it next.
Last week. Here's Parrish with his 2nd attempt here today. He's going to try to go. And Parrish, so athletic and speedy, shifting, gets brought down.
I'm the Modelo McCludy, and I'm looking for fans with good hands and great speed.
Minnesota with some
The
room
ones
to
who
move.
stay focused and never miss a play.
I was raised to believe that you're in this life not just for yourself. With Thrive-In, they help me create giving strategies with my finances.
I'm always watching.
I love how we're aligned to make generosity a priority.
Fans, because football isn't really football without you.
Quick 15-second timeout.
So, what did you think of the pitch I emailed you?
In the first half.
Yes, the one that you emailed me. I remember the pitch. Oh,
a couple of field goals has been the difference here so far.
Here we are.
A 52-yarder and a 21-yarder by Kessinger from Minnesota. That's not the only score. Play action.
I love unique relationships with a twist. I know, because I read it.
He's found Elijah Spencer a few times.
I'm going to tell them you're interested.
The 4th catch of the day. The gain of 13 here for Minnesota as they move the chains.
Whenever they can catch Nevada in his zone, the reliable Elijah Spencer from that slot position has found success just finding that soft spot and knowing that Brosmer is going to find him.
3 receivers today for Brosmer. You mentioned week 1. He shared the wealth a little bit to 9 different receivers, 12 different receivers last week.
Good thing we're not in it for the glory.
Marcus Major, your tailback on this possession. It crosses over the 45-yard line. Drew Watts
Fox College football
making the
is
tackle,
sponsored
a gain of 5.
Defender. And by
Darius
Modelo,
Taylor,
now recruiting full-time fans.
Entered the medical tent about a series ago. He has left the medical tent and is now trying to get loose on the sideline, but until then, it'll be a heavy dose of Major.
Well, we saw him limping in the last series.
Who himself has now given uniforms back to his own.
We got a timeout here for Nevada.
He looked like Mariota forming down that sidelines as well. This guy's run for 28
It'll be a 30-second timeout.
The numbers are so prolific in his 6 years. As he showed, he can scoot too.
Different systems
Hey,
here,
guys.
but some carryover.
How are we feeling?
As Whittington is in.
You ready?
His run will get him to the 19.
Hey, Adams
Allison
Elementary.
on Dylan Gabriel.
Go
Yeah, wearing
Rams.
that number 8 in a Ducks jersey is kind of full circle for Dylan Gabriel.
think he needs
grew
one
up
too.
watching and
What do you think?
idolizing
This
Marcus
is
Mariota
not
in
just flu
Hawaii.
protection.
And
You guys ready to fight
every
some
time I
crime?
walk into that center named after Mariota,
Say, we
it
go get
reminds
him,
me
all right?
that it is
This
so
is
much
a
bigger
neighbor
than
looking out
myself.
for you.
What I'm able
Schedule
to do
flu
is that I just
and
remember the way he
COVID-19 vaccine.
motivated me, opened doors to the idea of being able to play quarterback coming up in Hawaii. So that I just want to instill
and your
that same
family
sense
today.
of belief
Walgreens.
and motivation for youngsters watching now.
Really powerful to have somebody to aim for. And
6-0
inspiration
advantage,
to
Minnesota
follow
over
that
Nevada.
run
Look at
gets
Jeff
to
Choate.
about the 21. I mean, you
Trying
can't
to
miss
fire up his
Mariota
team and put
in the
some sort of
facility.
stranglehold on this
And you
Minnesota
see
offense
this
looking to
huge
drive down the
hologram
field.
of
2nd
him
and
on
5
one of
coming
the
out of the
ceilings, and
timeout.
he has been that presence for this
Grossman
program.
looking deep downfield, pass
The
caught by
Woodwinds are
Brockington.
ready for third
Right
down.
at
The first third
25-yard
down for
line.
Oregon
Ledecky
today.
Brockington, a big catch for his first catch at a gain of 19.
And that's a big time throw. Big time
Tatum
throw,
Lamar
big
in the
time catch
backfield.
again.
Third
Finding
down
that
and
soft
5.
spot in his own
Gabriel
throws,
rolling
showing
to
how
his right.
intelligent, patient he can be.
He throws with the left, he leans, and did he get the ball? There is the question. Where was the ball when he stepped out of bounds? That's what they were at. Johnson chased him out of bounds, and let's see it. It's first down.
With the
being a fixer. Just like Mariota was for so many years, that whole play was discombobulated. Two ducks run into each other. And you're right, Jason. Where is the ball? Is he holding the
be a
open? Is
little
he using
big
those
now.
legs effectively? That's a first down.
Yeah,
And
he is.
extends
You
it
see
over
number
the
7 there on the
sideline
floor. The
before
leading
he steps
tackler
out of bounds there.
coming
First
into
down.
today
Lamar
for
remains
Nevada.
in.
As they tend to watch, we will
And
step
he was the
aside.
guy who saved the day on the kick return that got dropped at the goal line
When you're a
last
small
week,
business
which we
owner,
see one of
your
on the
to-do
West
list
Coast
can be
every year in college football, I feel like.
Super helpful.
Saw the time of possession edge for Oregon State, but when the Ducks have had the ball, there's been no panic. Like, we got to get our
Progressive makes
plays
it easy to
off.
see
That
if you can
hasn't
save money
happened. They've
with a
just been
commercial
very
auto quote
efficient,
online,
and
so
we'll have
you
a
can get back
timeout
to
called by
online better
Oregon
to
State.
use.
Absolutely not.
Get a quote at progressivecommercial.com.
Ducks have the ball
We're
when we
back
come
after
back. 15
this
to
injury
7.
timeout, and Drew Watts hasn't moved. Still on the field.
People always say,
2 points of concern
Until
last
it isn't.
week. He exited the
Remember
game
before
in the
AI
first
when you
half.
had to
He
type
returned in the
to search?
second half and went on to lead
And
his
when
team
you
in
couldn't
tackles,
ask your
but
phone to
also
do
that
this?
green
Put these
dot on
restaurants
the
on a
back
map.
of his helmet. Him leaving the field means that
What about taking a
communication will
photo
now
and
need to go
reimagining
through
it?
somebody else.
Man, remember when all
That's a good
phones pretty
call.
much
You see
did the
that
same
green
stuff?
dot on the back of his helmet. One of the new rules
Until they
here
didn't.
in college football is that you
Get
have
the all-new
communication.
Google
You get to
Pixel
pick
9
one
Pro
guy
phones
on
at
defense, one guy
googlestore.com.
on offense. And that the coaching staff can communicate up until 15 seconds of the play clock, and then the communication is cut off. Minnesota Golden Gophers, 112 yards on first down plays.
You don't have any idea what you're asking.
Another opportunity for them to finish a series here.
That's been their problem. We've seen it, especially in short yardage situations. Brosmer looking for the fade route. It is intercepted.
With investing options from Navy Federal Credit Union, Rob feels financially at ease, which means he can worry about other things like landing this fish. What if the fish is really big?
Driver, the wide receiver,
What
did
if it's
not
not
expect
a
that
fish?
football coming.
What if
Watch
it's
how long
treasure?
it takes number 4 to look for
What
the
if the
football.
treasure is cursed?
The
Rob has
quarterback
a lot of
will
things to
always
worry
have an
about,
advantage
but as a
if he
member
is
of Navy
ready for the
Federal, his
football.
finances
Where
aren't
you
one
are.
of them.
Rosemer threw that ball, and
Become
you
a
see
member
Christian
today.
explaining his case
Navy Federal
to his
Credit Union.
wide receiver coach Matt
Our
Simon right
members
there, and his
are the
head coach
mission.
PJ Fleck. Not sure what
At Burger
Driver
King,
was
we
expecting,
flame
but he was
grill
not
everything.
expecting that ball that early.
Because that's how it should be done. Hot, juicy, smoky, flame
Driver,
grilled,
the
made
Southern
real.
Diamond driver,
Come experience
of
the
course.
flame grilled difference of
Working
$2
everything.
units for
Started
just
his career a
$5.
couple of years at Penn State.
I got it.
Hey, these are tough conditions. Case is going to finish the drive.
You got it.
Worked through some things in the spring and the
If
summer.
only they were back at
Just
some
listed as a
But at least
sophomore.
there's
And all
Progressive
kinds
to
of
protect your home and auto.
learning curve and growing lessons for some of these younger players.
He's going to be special, but that rep right there is a regretful one.
So an opportunity here for this offense. Bradley Lewis using his legs this time. Only a pickup of one. Strigo Oh, by the way, the official stats changed the blocked field goal from Strigo to Anthony Smith. We saw how he put the ball right in between it. Could he not have gotten a piece?
Dylan Gabriel.
Yeah, we've got another injured player down on the field. It looks like Jace Henry, the big tight end for Nevada. And we will step aside once again.
Tragic injury at the early part of the 2019 season.
I'm your football-obsessed best man, and I think you having your big day during the big game is the worst.
Nearly went to
Are you
UCLA
kidding
that
me?
time around.
Physically, I'm right here. Mentally, I'm here. Yeah, I do. Come on, speed it up. When all eyes are on you, my eyes are glued to the
They're
game.
happy to have him right now. Second down and 8. James is in. It's play action. He'll throw near side. Says Johnson keeps his feet and then
And if you didn't bundle your home and auto insurance,
to the
well,
sideline.
this could be tough to tackle. So get Allstate and be better protected from mayhem.
The more I watch Cavante
Like me.
the Big Ten Live football postgame after the game. You got it built about the same, like 160 pounds, and you wonder.
Oh, Chase Henry. You see his measurables. He's a big guy, a talented guy. Only a couple of touchdown catches, but he is hobbling off because that right ankle was giving him some problems as he's getting helped off by the medical training center.
Is that Fairbanks, Alaska?
It's Alaska, buddy.
I've been to Alaska before, I think. Go to Fairbanks. It was nuts. I would love to trade some stories. What's high school football like out there in Alaska? It's a short season.
Where is your mouth his initially in Alaska in high school?
Gabriel's deep ball for the first time today.
That's how you know it.
That's a tackle by Andre Jordan on Evan Stewart.
Why would you say that?
No.
The jersey being pulled and tugged.
That's what we call fish in a barrel for an official.
I don't know. But they claim allegiance to Zalatan. And so their lives
Defense
are
number
forfeit.
27. 15-yard penalty.
I am on the
Automatic
hunt.
first down.
He is
They will
grabbing, pulling, impeding. That is, as you said, textbook
She
right
cannot
there.
hide
Very,
from
very
me.
obvious.
The flame is corrupted.
I love Dylan
Can we
Gabriel's
restore
deep ball,
it?
man. It is a thing of beauty. Whatever they teach on the islands, two are the same way. Marcus, those guys know how to throw it deep.
Got the air nerf working.
As he calls it, Gabriel wants to throw it back this direction. He's got a wide open tight end. Terrence Ferguson, little soft shoe to the 20-yard line. What a change of direction. It's a gain of 20. Does he remind you just body type of Kelsey a little bit? Oh, that's interesting. As you just watch that run, he's got like the shoulder lean in front of him. He just has movement and change of direction. I mean, that honestly, if you put Kelsey's number on there, just and he's big. Terrence is 6'5", 260, but they just move so smooth and not stiff. And you can see the numbers off the charts. He's going to chase Ed Dixon and Josh Wilcox down this season. Yeah, for all the records, Wilcox has the touchdown record for tight ends at Oregon. Gabriel loads a time. End zone. It's a touchdown. Trayshawn Holden. You can't give Dylan Gabriel 8 seconds. This is such a stark contrast to what we saw the first couple of weeks with 7 sacks. People harassing him all the time. Just a 3-man rush. He sees it, he feels it. An excellent job by Cornelius. And then once he sets his feet and is able to scan
Only took
the
39
entire
seconds
field,
for Minnesota to find the end zone, and Darius Taylor now has his first receiving touchdown of his career. 2 plays, 16 yards, 39 seconds, and 10 points off of turnovers. Now today, Minnesota has accumulated, Brock, 34 points off turnovers for the season.
That is a head coach's dream right there. It helps relax a somewhat struggling, if not inconsistent offense, saying, you know what, let's go out there and fly around and try to make plays and take risks, because clearly our defense has our back.
Now a word from Hampton by Hilton for the step.
Kesich isn't giving anyone a chance to return any of these kicks. Another touchback later tonight. Dennis Iowa leads Nebraska into action against Northern Iowa, and Northwestern clashes with Eastern Illinois. Coverage begins at 7:30 Eastern.
They're hungry for the win. Big time.
When you're playing to win, you can make mistakes. About it. You're
not picture Joel crushing the continental breakfast.
In the workout room.
And the workout room, yeah. All right, so 20-plus yard plays,
Yes.
4 of them already today. Do you see an identity?
I do, and it starts up front, right? It starts with that line of scrimmage, allowing all these stars to do what they're capable of doing, what everybody, I think, going into the season thought they were going to do. Remember, they were off the charts last year in every way offensively. And 20-plus yard plays, all the same. 11th in the country. They had just 6 the first 2 weeks, especially against Idaho. Nothing against them. They have found it today, and it was all started at the line of scrimmage.
I need to target something first.
See if maybe special teams can do something for them with Card, the freshman, and he is tripped up. That's a really nice play on special teams, and that's Betcher. Of course it is.
Could they still
Why
be
wouldn't it
nearby?
be? He's got a
Continuing
nephew
to
who's an
put up the
Oregon State
flame.
fan, Bryce Betcher, by the way. And like he
I
said, he
will
didn't
see you
respond to
through
all
the
the text
shadows.
messages in 2022,
Despite
but he's a
everything.
really good baseball player, Brock.
Yes, he is a dynamic center fielder. And you said it best. We're watching some tape on him.
What are those
You're like, yeah, he looks like a linebacker playing center
Hardly
field,
seen
and he can
Trick
scoot.
of the
That's why the
shadow.
Astros drafted him
I
in the
will see.
13th round. And
You all go
won a
ahead.
Gold Glove out in center field and controls that turf. Well, he patrols this linebacker turf too.
Yeah, he is not center fielder playing linebacker. It's the other way around, like you said. Here is Hankerson. Betcher got a hand on his foot, but couldn't take him down. And it's a gain of about 4, as Johnson finally did knock him down.
Jason, it's not often that you say a drive with 6 minutes to go in the second quarter is so hypercritical, but in this game, it is.
Yeah.
They've got to stay within striking distance so they can run the ball.
Especially because Oregon gets the ball out.
You won't live to see.
2nd and 6. Play action. Boy back in, he'll roll, come to this side, and Betcher flowing with the play again, going laterally to set up a 3rd down.
Wow, did he cover some ground? Holy smokes. That was your play in the right center field gap, because you're going to watch him right here. And just the amount of ground. Good play action. We've seen this a couple different times, and then boom, right there you put your foot in the ground. You've got to take the right angle for a fly ball and the right angle to chase the QB down.
You know, hit probability, that was 1st down probability through the roof, and Betcher changed the numbers. Substitution allowed here. Tuioti will come out. Oregon will use the substitution to help itself. Winston came on, and a timeout forced for Oregon State. It's legal. It's within the rules. Oregon State said this week that they didn't want to substitute too much to give Oregon the chance to do that very thing. So 3rd and 2. Let's watch the similarities between Betcher on the baseball diamond to football.
Look at him in center field in that jump, and then just the amount of ground to cover. And the same thing today. This was the opening series of the game. He is all over it and an awareness to jump it. And then, as you said, right, they chart all those plays for the outfielders of hit probability. Allison, that was pretty good at taking the 1st down away.
Yeah, and he told us there are definitely some similarities between chasing down a ball in center field and the ball carrier on the football field. And it's that initial reaction and that initial instinct. He said, when you see the ball off the bat, you have to go full speed, just like you do when you see a ball carrier about to make a cut. You have to react and go with no hesitation and trust your instincts to full speed. We saw that.
He has it a big way, Allison. 3rd and 2. Walker in motion. They'll follow him. McCoy throwing over the middle, and he's got Reddix. 1st down, Oregon State, and a big one for the Beavers.
Really nice job by McCoy to slow himself down. A 3rd down you had to have. And every offense in college football, heck, the NFL runs that play. It's called mesh. Reddix comes underneath on a shallow cross. You see Ryan Henderson right there. Yep, I've called that. I've seen it. This is my 1st time doing it. Sat under Chip Kelly for a bunch of years there at UCLA, the last 4. Well done, great execution.
Light be my...
Play action. Here comes pressure, and he'll drop it off. It's Hankerson hit from behind by Tuioti. It's a loss on the play for Oregon State.
That's an awesome awesome job by Tuioti to retrack, and you would expect nothing less. His dad is the D-line coach, after all. It is a screen the entire way, and he retraces his steps. He feels it, he goes back to it. Urgency from the Ducks here defensively. It's almost like we know what the offense is capable of. Boy and Dan Manning work so well together. But defensively, you get to stop and get the ball back, and after halftime, you can step on the gas.
Good. McCoy giving ground again. He'll drop it on Hankerson. Wide open. Green grass in the state of Oregon. And down he goes about a yard short.
It doesn't matter.
Jackson following. It's a gain of 12.
Idaho did this a bunch. Just got linemen out in front. I think Idaho ran 8 screens in their 48 plays. And Oregon State says, well, if it worked for Idaho pretty well against an aggressive group, let's start screening them too.
More shadows. We're trapped in here, aren't we?
Alon checks in, and he's thrown back. Tuioti, what a series. What a series.
Let's go.
Yeah, what did Allison say that Betcher talked about when it came, to play in center field? Can't wait. And Tuioti does the same thing right there. Just absolutely beats the block there. The cutoff block says, I know what you're going to try to do to me. I'm going to defeat that block and that third down.
What do you think about this here? 4th and 1.
The light shines through you.
Aggressive.
But what if it goes out?
Hankerson in. Walker in motion. Straight ahead. Hankerson first down. Oh, he just absolutely trucked Betcher.
You know what else that very clearly from Trey Bray? I may be a defensive guy, but I know when my defense is struggling. We can't stop them. We don't have an answer right now for Dylan Gabriel, who's 10 for 10. A run game that is overwhelming us. And the chance we got is to try to stay on the field here offensively and make the most of this possession.
He told us, great teams respond, bad teams react. They were responding right there rather than reacting to Oregon.
That's all we can do. It can't be done.
First down from midfield. They'll run one play before the 2-minute. Walker to the 40 and then some. Cody Savage knocked him down. Gain of 14 and some momentum for the Beavers into the 2-minute. Now 1:57 whistle. Enormous.
You don't understand.
Enormous. 117 seconds for Oregon State next.
Darkness, but I enjoyed it.
Enjoyed hurting people?
On Season 7 of Fansville by Dr. Pepper, the new era of college football has arrived.
What's it mean, Sheriff? The 12-team playoff. It's here.
And it's getting stranger than ever.
Someone's stealing our signs! Making mistakes. Is it true that I was born in Texas? Make you unworthy?
No!
The landscape is shifting.
Hate me, new conference.
The cast is growing.
I'm a new character.
And the game is changing.
They didn't put Dr. Pepper in this game? So unrealistic. We waited 11 years
for nothing!
All aboard the hype train!
Fans are going off the rails.
Where you going? We're going all the way! Whoa!
Because this season we're going full steam ahead.
Hey guys, check out my new tattoo.
Into the great unknown. Or are we?
State quarterback injured in practice. He's out for the season.
Does this mean the hype is over?
Okay, everyone off the hype train.
I immediately regret this tattoo.
College football, it's a Pepper thing.
Don't miss incredible deals at Macy's One Day Sale. Shop for what you need now and save up to 60% on specials so good they won't last. Going on now at Macy's.
Be strong, my friend.
Illyria, we would have been lost without you. Thank you.
I'm glad you're all safe.
Start your day with Nature Made, the #1 pharmacist-recommended vitamin and supplement brand.
The Saints take on Dak and the Cowboys. Wow! Or Rams, Cardinals, Sunday on Fox. Check for the game in your
We
area.
owe our service to
Start
those-
your day with a bang.
Let's have a party.
As FS1's brand new lineup
We're going to change up the vibe.
brings you everything you need
Have some fun, old guy.
to level up your game.
Undeniably, my favorite
I'm not surprised.
Every weekday on FS1.
You know the light is not with me.
Fox
There
College
is no
Football is
darkness
sponsored
so
by
deep
Ice Cold
that the
Dr.
light
Pepper.
cannot reach us.
College football
It's a Pepper thing.
Just be
You played here in Corvallis.
with me.
What an atmosphere and a beautiful place to watch a football game.
Now.
Yeah, it didn't look like this.
Breathe.
it was very different last century, Mr. Benetti.
Well, they had all the construction people doing the work, as you just saw.
And I don't think they were singing Steve Perry, too.
We are the seekers of light. We are the holders
Sorry about your
of
math. They
hope.
put 3 more seconds
did.
on, so it's a big
In the
120.
very
It
heart
is.
of shadow.
You know what? A little extra of a rivalry
We
never
are the
hurts.
lamps that guide the way.
On first down, McCoy to throw. Down the middle, he's got Noga, his second catch of the year. And second down coming up.
All the time you possibly can. You see this in the NFL so often. Right? You'll be like, come on, let's get going. No, those quarterbacks and the veteran guys, they don't want to leave any seconds. And right now, this offense, that's got to be your mindset.
Oregon does have 3 timeouts to burn. This drive is over 5 minutes now. They had a 6.5-minute drive earlier in the first half.
The rest is just
McCoy to
time
Walker. Oregon missed 2
and
tackles.
trust.
There were 2 more ducks, and Walker just fought and fought and fought. It's third down.
My faith kindles my hope.
Wow. We're in this earlier, and Oregon is all
you are
over it.
lost
To
in
your point, you
darkness,
do not
we
see
are
Brandon
here to
Johnson miss
help.
many of those
We need to
tackles, but that
return
was
to
all want
Malaga.
to.
Well,
I need to
Walker
let the
told
gentleman
us
know
as there's a
what
first
happened here.
down. They're just running straight ahead now.
This
That's
order of
Hankerson,
merit
who's
is
got
known.
some moxie. Walker said, look,
The
I was
harbinger
under-recruited. I
that's
felt like
become
more
is
people
sabotage.
should have been on what I do.
She
And
won't stop.
that kid, that
Your
run
people
to
need
get
to be
short
ready.
of the first down by
That should
just
have been
1
third
yard.
and 9.
That's right.
Should have been 3rd and 9, and the difference right there allows you to put the ball in Hankerson's gut and allows him to run right through the ribs of Birch. Won't show up on much as a reception there for Walker, but you know how pivotal that was.
His mom, his dad, his brother all went to Oregon State. He's got it in his blood. There he is in motion on first down. McCoy stays on it, throws, Walker, incomplete. The marker down. There's a marker down on the hit. Back at the 31-yard line.
Yeah, that was Devin Jackson coming in like a bullet and absolutely unloads.
We should grab some food at the inn
22
while
and a
we
half
can.
miles an hour has
One
Mr.
of the
Jackson hit on their
general's
catapult
rules I
system, and that
happily
is
follow.
flying.
Perhaps a moment's rest is
Roughing the
warranted.
passer with targeting.
With targeting.
Defense number 26. 15-yard penalty. Automatic first down.
So obviously this is looked at in the replay booth right now as every targeting. I don't know if I see targeting. And frankly, Jason, I mean, he's just running right through him. This is going to be a great look at it right here. He hits the arm. Mike Pereira, I told you, I need you. And especially on this one.
Well, I'll tell you, in my opinion here, I don't think it's roughing the passer or targeting.
Agreed.
It's not late, okay? Now, he certainly doesn't lead with the crown of the helmet. Now, he just has to have forcible contact to their head and neck area, and maybe that's the only thing that they could hang their hat on. But to me, hands go in front. I just don't see this as a foul, period.
Mike, where's the first contact? It looks like first contact's into his arm, right?
Yeah, it really does. He kind of puts his arms out, what you want him to
Welcome,
do.
outsider.
Now, that doesn't
Pull up a chair.
automatically
Wait out curfew.
take over and eliminate any
cats are
possibility
trained
of
as well
head
as
and
the
head or
soldiers
neck
are.
contact.
When one bonds
but
to you,
again, you saw the
you have a
officials
friend for
talking about
life.
it before, and again,
Do
as you
you
say
have a
there,
links?
the arm is contacted first, but they
Oh,
said, now remember, roughing
No,
the passer
no.
with targeting.
I
So
am
even
a
if they
person.
take targeting off, they cannot take
We
off the
will
roughing the
find
passer.
Great point. That's exactly what I was just going to ask you. And so
That's
this is
not
going to be a
targeting.
first down. No, it's not.
It's
We
not
all
targeting.
agree.
And, but you know what? Hey, I understand in real time. When you're watching Devin Jackson at 230 pounds and running as fast as he
I need
does,
to see rain
you
about my
understand the
prosthetics
violence
anyway.
of this impact.
Let's meet
But he
later.
clearly has eyes up, heads up. He hits the arm first, and then he goes right through the 180 pounds of McCoy. It shouldn't be roughing.
Yeah.
It's not going to be targeting, but you cannot take the roughing the passer off.
Would you be in favor of them being able to take the roughing
Like
the
the
passer
NFL
off?
does.
Yeah.
Yes.
After review, there is no foul for targeting. Number 26 may remain in the game. However, there is a foul for roughing the passer. The penalty is half the distance to the goal. Automatic first down.
So, rightfully so, Jackson gets to stay in the game, and he's such a key player for Oregon.
And the hard part for Jackson, as you heard from Mike Pereira, you don't want him to stop. Right. You want him to run right through the face and to be physical, and that's where he's taken serious strides this season. That's going to be the one they watch on tape and say, Devin, do it again. You did absolutely the right thing delivering that kind of blow. Unfortunately, the call goes against you.
Second penalty only for Oregon, and penalties have been a big issue. They've been pretty clean here in this first half. There is a first down available at the 1. 32 seconds left. First half. McCoy throwing it. End zone. Incomplete. We wanted Caulfield. Dante Manning, the longtime Duck, in his fifth year with the Cubs.
So get your tight end out there, right? Your big tight end. You're going to try to run a slant and go. And Manning's like, hey, I've seen these with receivers, and I can turn my hips in a hurry. There's contact, but there's contact by both. That's a good no call.
They could run it once for sure with one timeout remaining. McCoy surveying and running. McCoy is very close. Let's see. It is a touchdown. It looked like his foot might be out at about the 1. We'll see if this stands.
Well, you said they could run it once.
Oh, how close.
He's out.
He's out.
He's likely, will likely out by a toe.
The ruling on the previous play was a touchdown. The play's under further review.
Mike Pereira gets time and a half to do 2 hits within a 1-minute span or so. Mike, you're worth the money. What do you see here?
Oh, I thought that left foot was going to be down inbounds there, but it does slide and then touching the white. So therefore, as soon as that happens, where is the ball? And you can see that the ball in his right hand is at about the half-yard line. So to me, he's down short of the goal line. It's not a touchdown.
Thank you, Mike. This should be a first down.
Correct. And a timeout and 17 seconds. And you could not have operated this final possession better.
To play keep away from Oregon as well.
Absolutely for Trent Bray. And that fourth down decision, not easy to do on your side of the 50, right? Yeah. But to have the courage of his conviction to go for it there, this will be at the half-yard line. And as you said before that play, with a timeout in your pocket, you can absolutely still run the ball.
That fourth down you were talking about came at the 2:51 mark. So they have whittled down 2:34 from that clock to keep Oregon off the ball. This will be 22-7. They'll take the touchdown away.
And by the way, how good has Giovanni McCoy played? I know Dylan Gabriel has been perfect, but Giovanni McCoy is a runner, as a facilitator, and just this moment, right, to that point of responding. Right? Sometimes when you see your opposing quarterback doing what he's doing, you feel like, I got to make every play. Nope. Stay calm. Do your job. Be incredibly efficient. And the transfer from Idaho has been terrific.
After review, the runner's foot was out of bounds with the ball on the 1-yard line. It will be first and goal at the 1. Please reset the game clock to 21 seconds.
They'll get 4 seconds. And to your point, Brock, he's gone now 2.5 weeks without a turnover. And coming up at the half, Mike Hill, Emmanuel Acho, Chris Peterson, the State Farm halftime show. They'll have the Apple Cup for you, along with what Alabama did in Madison earlier. But right now, before we go to the studio, it's a yard that separates green and black. Here we go, he says. And they do. Hankerson, second effort, got him in. What a tough run. Devin Jackson got a face full of Hankerson.
I mean, this is, you go back through the 100 years of this matchup. And there have been Beaver running backs and Duck linebackers and vice versa that have just gone face to face with each other just like that. And the amount of power and strength in Hankerson's lower half to absorb that contact and have the balance and the power to finish. Yeah, that flex is
I
worthy.
was inspired last Belledar's shadow.
There's an injured player down for Oregon State. It looks like Jacob Strand, the offensive lineman. It is. When your coaches say that you, Hankerson, and your teammate Jam Griffin run like you have a Napoleon complex, that kind of thing happens.
Well, remember, they brought in other Louis Vuitton to Colorado because he wasn't good enough.
No.
So we needed our own Louis Vuitton, and we shipped him away. And he's saying,
I've learned to do
I think
everything from
to Dion and the
fighting
rest,
to dressing
I'm pretty
myself
good
with
too.
one hand.
I can play.
But what if I figured out the weight balance?
Those Florida boys.
You said that
He's
was
one
what
of
you
8 on this
didn't like
roster.
about
This
the first
Florida
two
guys.
Then I
They're
think
wired
some of our
differently
veterans who
sometimes.
will lose an arm to the Nerubians will be very
We had a
grateful
touchdown
that
against
we
Oregon
improved the
State last
design.
year while
Rain,
with
I've
Colorado.
learned
The
to
extra
navigate
point is
my
through.
life without the prosthetic.
22-14. And
I
oh,
don't
do we
want
have
to
a
relearn
Pacific Life
everything,
game
but
summary
if you want
sponsored
to
by
improve
Pacific
something
Life
of
for
mine,
you.
a better
Splash.
shock absorber on the
Creating
shield
financial
is a lesson
security
of
for nearly
reform.
160
Those
years. A
Nerubians
lot
are
of splash
getting
plays
bigger,
for Oregon so
and it
far, and
puts all
Dylan
that
Gabriel
weight
still
on
hasn't
shoulder.
missed.
Now look at the efficiency of those two quarterbacks, and then both of them have used their legs really well when things are broken down or to be creative. 116 yards on the ground. Oregon has figured it out on the offensive line, Jason. No sacks, no tackles for loss. But defensively, they're just pretty leaky in that run defense. They were coming into the game, giving up 135 a game and well over on pace for close to 240.
Part of that was Ashton Genty last week, one of the best running backs in the country.
No question.
I will ask you, if you're Oregon State, would you think about kicking it out of bounds? I mean, I know you can get it through the end zone, but make sure you do, right? Because of the special teams of Oregon?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, you have got to.
27 has changed his number to 37. 27 becomes 37 for Oregon.
You got that?
Lamar just changed his number for a moment, like it's not hard enough for spotters in college football.
Yeah, this one's got to find black.
Oh, boy. It's returnable. And it is the man who just changed his number for the moment. It's Lamar, and he'll get to the 29. See, they weren't even telling the truth. It was the other 27 that became the 37, so 27 could return it. You got that? Sure. Friday night on Fox, Illinois takes on Dylan Raiola, Nebraska, in a primetime Big Ten clash. Nebraska's for real now. Friday night, 8 Eastern on Fox. You agree with me? Nebraska's for real?
Yeah, that defense is for real, and Brett Bielema's done a nice job with the Illini. I don't think anybody saw them 2-0 coming out the gate as well.
Have not checked the score with the Chippewas today out of Central Michigan. Oregon's just going to kneel on it.
Well, it's a one-score game going to the second half, and quite honestly, I think if you asked Tremblay and the Beavers that, they'd sign up for it. But that's
Only
a problem.
loss. Look, Oregon fans are like, Brock, that's great. Like, we're up 8 here. But, like, you know, got to close. That was the theme last year at the end of the season. It's the theme right now. Mike Hill, Emmanuel Acho, Chris Peterson in Los Angeles. State Farm halftime show.
Yeah, good game in Corvallis right now. 8-point game as we welcome you to the State Farm halftime show inside our LA studios. Mike Hill, Emmanuel Acho, Chris Peterson hanging out with you. Oregon getting some explosive plays. Dylan Gabriel has been perfect so far passing the ball as we look at our State Farm halftime highlights. The only thing stopping Oregon
sensitive sort of airspace and defense facilities over our nuclear weapon silos that are buzzing our fighter jets, that are interfering with carrier group, workups, that is a national security issue, right? You have actual defense equities that are manifestly vulnerable to something that's out there, right? And that is a national security concern, right? It could be an adversary that's using UAPs as cover to do, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance of our military capabilities, or to sort of insert noise into how we think about detecting and protecting our most sensitive platforms. And so that is a natural, I think, initial angle of attack for getting this sort of inside the political discourse in a more official way, right? Because most people aren't ready to initially just jump to these more difficult and amorphous philosophical, more foundational questions, right? It's just there's something flying around doing things that we can't understand in sensitive aerospace, interrupting our military capabilities, and potentially even harming military and intelligence service members. And that's a 5-alarm fire, right? That if you can't protect, if your basic military capabilities, you got a lot of questions to answer. I mean, we've had weeks of disruption a few months ago to Langley Air Force Base. We had similar disruptions over Palmdale, which is Lockheed Martin Skunk Works.
Talk about what actually happened.
Yeah, so there was drones, meaning or UAPs that were detected flying in and around Langley Air Force Base. This is maybe 3 months ago. And they actually had to move the entire fighter squadron out there to a new base because they couldn't actually launch. Basically, all the airspace was shut down. It was a big deal because that Langley Air Force Base is responsible for protecting the National Capital Region as its air defense. They scramble those jets, and so this was a big deal, right? You had a pretty significant national capability that was severely disrupted for several weeks, and there's been no public explanation of exactly what happened. I mean, people draw hints to maybe it was the Chinese, sending drones to try to test our capabilities, cause nuisance. That's like the natural, first order explanation, but nobody's actually said that, right? There's been no evidence that's been brought to bear on what these things are. I mean, I did a whole series of assessments a number of years ago explicitly on counter unmanned aerial systems in the National Capital Region for our different, systems of protection, both military, Secret Service, et cetera. And I ran through all these scenarios, not about UAPs, but about small unmanned systems, how they could kind of get in over different perimeters, what would be our detection capabilities, how would we respond. That was like in 2016, 2017. That was a long time ago. This was a question, an issue that we knew about. 2024 comes around 8 years later, and you have these massive disruptions over these very sensitive facilities.
So what do you think happened?
I don't know. There's been no public, evidence on this. I've heard, rumors that people saw things that didn't look like drones, but that's all it is, right? But this is the basic problem. Because we have this taboo, because we basically just either, one, assume it's just always some prosaic explanation. Okay, well, that's a huge problem, right? Okay, can China basically shut down, on a whim, different platforms, but just by flying a few, commercial drones over it? Like, that's not great.
But I would have thought just commercial drones would be shot down.
You would think that.
Yeah.
Which over several weeks, apparently, we were unable to use our. You can imagine this was a massive problem for senior leadership in the government, being like, "Wait, why does this keep happening? Why can't we?" We had to move this whole, squadron.
So why couldn't the planes take off from there?
Well, when you have objects coming into your airspace willy-nilly, you can't launch, fighter jets. Especially, Langley Air Force Base is in the middle of nowhere. It's, relatively populated area. It interferes with the airspace, and you can't launch anymore. You can't conduct your normal missions.
Like I said, I would expect them to be shot down. So these don't sound like drones. You would expect it to be something.
We haven't physics. I've seen no reports that we were able to shoot anything down, protect the airspace, stop these objects from coming in and out.
So it sounds like they probably couldn't shoot them down because it's something with different physics, perhaps.
It could be. It could be. Maybe China has, an autonomous platform that doesn't have any uplink or downlink that you can jam or disrupt. Maybe it's sufficiently maneuverable that a net or another platform can't get a target lock on it. So there's other explanations besides we can't shoot it down. It could just be an advanced platform.
And it might not necessarily be Chinese.
Yeah, I mean, it could be Chinese, Russia. I mean, most people look at China because, one, they have probably the more advanced capabilities, and they've been constantly pushing. Obviously, there's the balloon whole thing. They've been constantly pushing in different ways to kind of test our capabilities and are very creative in using non-traditional platforms and modalities to collect on our defense systems. I mean, Russia's pretty much preoccupied. They have their own activities that they do for covert collection, but the scale and you know, broad approach that China's taken is usually they're the first culprit to point fingers at. But I just point those two examples out as like, you know, we say UFOs and it sort of has this sort of cultural taboo, this sort of stigma, but like within the defense intelligence community now, it's become like an unavoidable pressing matter of national security interest, right? You have these objects invading your airspace, disrupting operations. That's not something you can just ignore or sweep under the rug. You actually have to address that. So that's, I think, one of the main, you know, and for good reason, a priority focus, right? But because, you know, I have this other background in physics and philosophy and thinking through these larger questions, you know, you brought up the whole point of, okay, if we actually have to reckon with the object level question here, which is not the bureaucratic process or the political process or where we are in this sort of negotiation between different power centers and the bureaucracies and the different intelligence and defense communities and the political system, like that's obviously, you know, the nitty gritty where we are now. But if you want to zoom out and actually try to get to the core of like what does this imply and how are we actually going to try to understand it on a more fundamental level, not just like as some glowing objects in the sky or something that's zipping around that we can't explain. I think you actually have to really, you know, get to these foundational questions that, you know, occupy lots of people, which is like, what's the nature of life and intelligence? You know, what's the nature of consciousness? What are the basic, you know, rules of physics that any advanced intelligence could potentially exploit? And those are the big open questions, right? We're aggressively trying to get a better handle on them, but we don't have a unified theory of physics. We don't really have a satisfactory explanation of consciousness. That's a naturalistic one, and we don't really understand what are the criteria for life or intelligence in the universe. Right? These are like the basic open questions, and so you can use sort of the concept of UAP or a non-human intelligence as like a prism that you can sort of try to pull these different philosophical and scientific threads together, and then you can try to like, you know, paint a certain picture of what you think is happening, but you have to really trace things back to you know, basic understanding of fundamental physics, philosophy, and sort of try to integrate, you know, a whole different set of different domains of human knowledge to try to understand what could explain UAPs.
Yeah, and my assumption is there doesn't have to be a singular answer. There could be multiple answers.
Yes, I mean, in fact, when we first spoke about this, I kind of like a canonical, you know, distribution of possible explanations for any sort of broadly considered UAP. Sort of is either sensor malfunction, right? There's gonna be categories of UAP that are just like phantasms. They're just mistakes. Right, there's a sensor malfunction, observer error. You know, we just made a mistake, right? Then there is essentially sort of misunderstood but real objects, right? So it was a actual, you know, balloon or a bug or a bird or whatever, and the sensor was fine, but you know, just because of the trick of the light or the parallax or whatever it was, you thought it was performing in ways that were anomalous when actually it was not anomalous, right? And then there's the third category, which is the object you're detecting actually displays anomalous performance characteristics. It actually...
We're there.
Well...
On some.
Yeah, exactly. But then you could say, but it's human-derived technology, right? It's really exotic, it's really anomalous, it's real, but it's prosaically human. It's just from an aspect of, you know, human knowledge that is not publicly available. We've got secret R&D programs doing all sorts of crazy Star Wars stuff. This is just one of those crazy R&D programs that we have developed some crazy Star Wars stuff. And then the fourth category is real objects displaying exotic, anomalous performance that are non-human derived. And those are the basic four categories, like mistake, and there wasn't anything there, mistake, and there was something there, but it was normal, something really, you know, exotic, but human derived, or something really exotic that's non-human derived. And I think, you know, these are not mutually exclusive. I think you're going to see examples of all the broad umbrella of UAPs is going to be, you know, a distribution of those four things. And I think the latter two, right, obviously the most interesting, you know, and they're not mutually exclusive either, right? You know, if we had access to, say, category 4, and we were able to figure out how it works, then we could create category 3, right? Those would be sort of correlated sort of phenomenon. And so I don't rule any of those out, but that's kind of the mental map.
Where are you spending most of your time in, though? The latter two?
I've been spending most of my time thinking about, the more fundamental physics and sort of philosophical questions that then you would have to grapple with to truly understand category 4.
Okay.
Right? Category 3 is interesting, but I'm also, in favor of keeping category 3 secret, right? Like, if we had some special capabilities that are like war-winning capabilities that would be important for strategic deterrence or actual, strategic advantage in a conflict scenario over China, I definitely don't want that to be compromised. That's why we spend all this money, is to protect category 3. But category 4, that's non-government information, right? The existence of non-human intelligence is not something the government can classify. It's like the existence of the moon. It's just a natural phenomenon. This is the nature of intelligence in the universe. That's not something the government can or has a moral, ethical right to classify. Category 3, they definitely have a legal and ethical right to classify that. I think it's very important to distinguish between category 3 and category 4, man-made, especially U.S. government-derived technology platforms, and non-human intelligence-derived technology, because we have systems of government, of law, of political legitimacy that gives the government a right to protect and keep category 3 secret. But those protections do not extend to category 4, right? And I think we need to separate those things out and then actually have a social and political and philosophical and scientific framework that's prepared to then take that category 4 seriously and to provide explanations both at a scientific level and to the mass public that can reckon with that. And so that's where I think a lot of work needs to go, because it's been, of course, shrouded in such taboo. You actually don't have sufficient brain power in say the white world of scientists, of philosophers, of people in different professions of responsibility to take that seriously and then apply different analytic methodologies and do hard cognitive work to actually try to build policy frameworks, scientific and analytic frameworks, and philosophical frameworks for category 4. So that's I think where a lot of work needs to go, because if the Senate is sending this signal that they could pass this bill, set up this independent review board that starts doing this important work, develops these control disclosure campaign plans, well, civil society is going to have to engage with that in a very serious way. Academia, right? Politics, religion. These are all going to be key stakeholders in that conversation, and they should start thinking those through now, right? And I think we actually do have pretty good useful frameworks to start with, right? We are starting to think about physics in potentially a new way. Philosophy is starting to reckon with a distribution of approaches to consciousness that were previously taboo or are now considered very, very sort of live hypotheses.
What does that mean? You mentioned you're concentrating on the consciousness side of things at the moment. What does that actually mean?
So I think if you actually you can come at it from both directions. You can what does UAPs mean for physics and philosophy? And you can start from the UAP sort of domain. You can sort of go out into answering potential philosophical or questions about physics, or you can go the other direction. You can start with what we're currently thinking, and independent of UAPs. Just start where is the sort of current frontier and discourse in frontiers of physics and in frontiers of philosophy, or philosophy of mind, philosophies of intelligence, of consciousness, of causation, complexity, and you can start to look at those different intellectual strands of work, take those seriously, and then see how they might apply to UAPs, right? So I try to do both. It's not an either or. But in particular, in philosophy of mind, and this is motivated right out of in the UAP domain, and even in official government discourse now, there is a recognition that the sort of nuts and bolts of the objects go hand in hand with sort of anomalous cognitive phenomenon, meaning the psychological effects of close encounters with these objects reported by military witnesses, close observers, as the UAP Disclosure Act calls them. They actually define close observers as individuals that have a close observation of UAPs, and then also experience different psychological, medical, biological effects that the government has been studying for a while. And so there is a effect on consciousness. There's an effect on whether perceptions of time, whether you lose a sense of time, or is
That's
almost
something Lou Elizondo said about people who've been close to the craft. They lose like a perception of time.
Yeah, that's a common sort of phenomenology.
Is that a gravity thing?
I mean, you could then search for different explanations. You have the basic symptom or the basic reported psychological experience, and then you put that as a data point that you would then try to construct an explanation for. And it could be, say, time dilation effect of gravity, or it could be something completely different, right? It could just be, an advanced ability to manipulate human perception directly, right? Kind of remote Neuralink, disruption to your normal processing capabilities. Or, advanced sort of, we have capabilities right now to basically, cause neurophysiological effects at a distance using sort of microwave beam weapons, essentially, right? We can affect sort of phonons in the neural water. We can stimulate, hallucinatory auditory perceptions. That's like the more acute ones. There's like more crude ones of just like ride control, where you can make you feel like you're being microwaved, extreme intense heating without actual any radiative damage, right? It's just stimulating the sort of proprioception in your skin to make you think like you're on fire when you're not. So we've invested a lot of money, like already right now, to manipulate human perception to either cause acute or more subtle effects. And so you can imagine like scaling that sort of capability up, right? And you could have all sorts of sophisticated ways of manipulating human perception. And so this is just, okay, we need to take all these data points in, not just like radar, or not just studies of physical materials, but the effects on human consciousness, the effects on human perception. And so those are just like scientific data points, right, to sort of motivate then looking at how we think about, well, normal human consciousness. What do we think, what's going on with that, right? And then look to both scientific and philosophical paradigms to try to get our arms around it.
So, okay, so you think this is like a Copernican moment?
I think it could be. I mean, humans, we are a relatively new intellectual species, right? Yeah. In the sense of like the last 400 years since maybe Galileo in 1623 kind of first formulated kind of a scientific mathematical paradigm that is essentially what bootstrapped up the Enlightenment and sort of scientific practice and has given us the wonders of technological civilization, right? We're able to mathematize reality, come up with models to understand natural phenomenon, and then create kind of an integrative core theory now, which is essentially standard model plus general relativity, that is extremely successful. And science has been extremely successful, almost too successful, to the point where we actually can no longer create experiments that deviate from the core theory. So we're kind of stuck right now, right? Like the standard model and general relativity are so good at prediction that every experiment we'd be able to run with maybe some boundary cases, basically confirms those theories. But we know that those two theories, the core theory, the components of the core theory, are like mutually inconsistent for many different reasons. But we know that basically we don't actually have a good root understanding of reality, even though the best theories we've come up with are kind of the limits of what we'd be able to develop experiments to test.
Is that incompatibility relativity with the quantum world?
Yeah, that's basically kind of the bottom line, right? Is that we have two different pictures of the universe, one for the very small, one for the very large, and they are very successful within their respective domains. Quantum theory for very small things, general relativity for the cosmos at large, large objects, where those different forces dominate, gravity versus the standard model forces, strong, weak, and electromagnetic force. And so we've been really successful the past 100 years, especially at constructing these theories, developing experiments, to really test them to extreme high degree of precision. And we've then developed technology, nuclear weapons, computers, quantum sensors. We've been able to do like crazy stuff using this basic physics knowledge. And so we're still exploiting that physics knowledge for useful technology, but that basic physics knowledge really hasn't moved a lot in the last like 50 years.
Where's the incompatibility?
So there's kind of a more fundamental incompatibility in there's different types of incompatibility. Like the basic one is that when you try to renormalize gravity to make it a quantum theory, you get these infinities basically that sort of blow the math up, and it just doesn't work. You can't quantize gravity in a way that we have to be able to quantize these other sort of fundamental forces. So we've been able to quantize, meaning make in terms of a discrete theory, theories of light, theories of the strong which is basically the theory of electromagnetism, the strong and the weak nuclear force. So the standard model gives us particles that we have sort of a good sense of their mathematical behavior as part of these different symmetry groups that define the standard model. Gravity, when we try to quantize that, we can sort of jam it in, but we do it in a very arbitrary way, and it doesn't actually give us what we want in terms of an explanation of gravity. And so there's a basic incompatibility. General relativity essentially is a theory of smooth manifolds, right? Like the universe essentially is defined as a space-time manifold with a certain geometric structure. And general relativity basically says gravity is just a deformation in that structure, right? The classic kind of metaphor is, it's the sort of stretching of space itself, right? So gravity is just essentially a deformation in a 3+1 space-time manifold. So heavy objects deform space-time more intensively, and objects want to go through, want to basically
37 combined punts. You don't believe me? It was 1931. Nobody scored, surprisingly. It was 0-0. Oregon will get it out of halftime. Downstairs, Allison Williams.
I asked Oregon State's Trent Gray about
And your
his
life's
quarterback
work
Javon
deserves
McCoy. He
nothing
said,
less
"We see what we've
than a
come to
lifetime
expect
guarantee.
from
But the tight ends, the guys
You
that are
made a
connecting to
promise.
that O-line on the outside, so they're getting it done as well for Texas A&M.
TIAA's promise of a guaranteed retirement paycheck for life. This promise pays off.
Daniels. It's Jimmy John from Mediterranean. Make it so you can enjoy the fresh summer flavors.
Demetrius beat it. 6'7", 330 pounds, gets the edge.
Now,
Daniels gives them a little bit more in terms of suddenness to the outside. You see the great block there by the right tackle? Just open green grass, and Daniels able to show you the speed.
18 more yards. Remember, this drive started at the 1-yard line as Ron Roberts, the defensive coordinator for the Gators, looking for an answer from his group. Marcel Reed designed the quarterback run as he goes for a couple yards before he is driven back.
There's a lot of miscues, Joe, for the Gators on defense in recent times. You see what they've done against the last 6 FBS opponents. Coverage busts. We saw one earlier in this game. Touchdown pass, guys not being in their lanes. We've seen that again tonight in the run game. Penalties, a pass interference here earlier in this game. There's a lot to clean up. If you're Ron Robertson's defense, Joe, I think they're talented on that side of the ball. They just cannot seem to get out of their own way.
Offense number 69, half the distance for the game.
Second and 8. Jay Smith, as he reverses course, and he gets a first down. The son of Emmett Smith, who was Mr. Two-Bits. The honorary cheer of Mr. Two-Bits, a former Gators legend with his son coming back to the swamp to play against the game.
How about the vision by AJ that time? That ball designed to go to the left side. Nothing there. Puts his foot in the ground and cuts it back to the right. That's now 14 first downs for Texas A&M. The Gators, meanwhile, they only have 2.
Emmett Smith is named above the swamp. Great scenery this day. And now watching his son Ethan have success at the 8-yard run there. Again, Smith.
People remember Emmett Smith, that what he did with the Cowboys, right? All-time leading rusher in the NFL. First down, to be clear, when the Gators really couldn't throw the ball, everybody knew number 22 was getting it. And they still could not stop it. Was the SEC most valuable player in 1989.
The issue was that it was in the end zone.
There was
After that
here at Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. And this dude was an absolute monster.
Left here is the career leader in rushing yards. Now second behind Eric Brett.
For the Empire, we must prepare for
2nd and
Belladonna to
5.
shift.
The 3rd and about 4 for the Aggies.
But the good deal is because you've had success running it here on this drive, you're setting this 3rd down up to be something manageable. This time in distance, Marcel Reed, you're expecting man coverage. The play clock comes in from Colin Klein, and you got to be thinking to yourself, where am I man being? Where am I man?
He was, Jeff Choate was pretty direct to us about how he was going to handle some of the unsportsmanlike penalties. Look at this breakaway. Darius Taylor off to the races. One man to beat's got the block. Cuts it Side. Taylor on his feet.
2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi.
81
That's a lot of Mississippi.
That is. That's a mighty
To starter. As he gives it to Maul, so he keeps himself, comes to the near side. And let's see the spot here as Derek Ringo makes the tackle.
Nice job by trying those bridges.
First you break a tackle, then you break another tackle, then it's off to the races. Darius Taylor not known as a speedster. He knows he has a little
keeps a second down coming
work to go. Nick Coward,
and this is
the market just short of that line to gain the 2-minute timeout in this first half that had a 47-minute delay.
Fourth down. The same system. And you want to hit the
extra point for Kessis.
In each of those seasons, different this year.
This one, 7-0.
Ferguson down.
Take a breath. Take a breath. After this one, Darius Taylor.
First class of the day.
Try me.
No charger. We're playing a dangerous game. But I guess battery death is just a part of battery life. Get used to it.
What's the matter? The battery lasts all day. See you next week.
What does Texas A&M University stand for? We stand for excellence.
I hate these chairs.
Respect, and loyalty.
She's shopping for a used car, but she doesn't know that nearly half of them
We
have been in
stand
an
for
accident.
leadership,
Luckily,
integrity,
Carfax shows how
and
accidents
selfless
impact
service.
price, so she doesn't have to overpay.
At Texas A&M, we stand for 4 straight hours. Bugs down Wendy's breakfast burrito. Fresh cracked eggs, seasoned potatoes, sausage. Stand in
Gotta
and
hand it to the tortilla.
We put
Suckers holding on for dear life. The boss of breakfast, gotta be Wendy's.
15 of 16 now. Sappington hearing it and his former
Division rivals take center stage in a potential playoff preview. Bryce Harper and the Phillies look to close in on an NL East crown.
Oh my goodness!
While MVP candidate Francisco Lindor leads the Mets in their fight for a wild card spot. Or the Diamondbacks
I'm your football
battle the
obsessed best
Brewers.
man, and I
It's
think you
Baseball
having your
Night
big
in
day during the
America,
big game is the
Thursday at
worst.
7 Eastern on Fox.
Are you kidding me?
Physically, I'm right here, but mentally, I'm here. Yeah, I do. Come on, speed it up. When all eyes are on you, my eyes are glued to the game.
Everyone confesses
Touchdown.
to somebody.
And if you didn't bundle your home and auto insurance for all of this could be tough to tackle. So get Allstate and be better protected from mayhem. Like me.
So I was dating this guy, Chris, for years. I wanted to buy a house. Chris didn't. Then I realized I need to be with someone to buy a
Quarterback
house.
comparison is powered by
I can do it on my
Outlet
own.
88, Engine Smart, Earth Kind. The numbers for Lewis and Brosmer here today.
This is the one who helps
Obviously,
everyone
Brosmer
stay
has found
safe.
some success in the
An
air once
unsung
again.
hero in a building full of everyday heroes is just how he likes it. The industrial grade products you need. Call, click, or stop by. Granger, for the ones who get it done.
What does it mean to be rich? Maybe rich is less about reaching a magic number and more about discovering magic. The key to being rich
Brosmer to us
is
yesterday said
knowing
he's
what
been
counts.
surgical, intent, making quick decisions.
Want the effects of
His first time
but
playing at the
faster?
FBS
Meet
level, another
Rose
touchback.
Sparks. They contain sildenafil and tadalafil.
An 80-yard, officially an 80-yard score by Darius Taylor.
See if Sparks are right for you.
Gives
at
him his
Rome.com/Sparks.
third touchdown of the day. That's a career high.
Returning pumpkin pie
His
and French
previous
silk
one
pie.
was
This
43
lineup is the
yards.
goat.
And Lisa, if you're in Nevada, that's everything that's been wrong with this season personified. One, it's the missed tackles.
Before they're gone,
It's
only
the unsportsmanlike conduct penalties.
With multi-view on
bailing out an
NFL Sunday
offense
Ticket,
and leading
you can
concussion.
watch up to 4 live games at once, which means keeping up with your fantasy team is no longer a fantasy. NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube
Over to the
TV.
near
Watch every
sideline,
game,
Marcus Bellin
every Sunday.
making the catch. And let's go back to the touchdown.
Darius Taylor showing off his
Why don't you lay on a beach getting
gambit
fat
of
on pina
tricks.
coladas?
Nice
Why
and
not buy a
patient as
soccer
front.
kick?
He's so hard to
Dude,
get down
why
on
would
the
they
ground,
ask
steps
why?
over one guy,
What are they
goes
even
to
talking
another.
about, kid?
Look at big
What
tight
they're
end
really
Nick
asking
Callum
is,
said,
why
hold
did
on,
you
wait for
quit
me, buddy.
football? They
Darius
don't
Taylor
understand
knows
that
he's
you
not
live
the
and
fastest,
breathe
but
for
I'm going to
football.
come
Because you're
back
Tom
and I have more
freaking
juice
Brady.
left in the tank
One day,
than you do.
make a great
That's a team
wife.
run right there.
80 yards for Taylor, the longest Gopher run since Lawrence Maroney back in 2005 had a 93-yarder
Next week,
against
starting
Wisconsin.
Saturday strong with Big Noon Saturday. Will Howard and number 3
Lewis being
Ohio
chased
State
by Smith and a flag
take
coming
on
out.
the thundering herd of Marshall. It all starts 10 a.m. Eastern with Big Noon kickoff live from Columbus. Then Ohio State.
Anthony
Marshall
Smith likely the defender being held there.
Here are all the ranked teams in the Big Ten to this point. Michigan a winner earlier today. Nebraska has snuck in at 23. It's going to be a tough
As a referee, Tim O'Day with the holding call against Nevada. The 7th penalty. Remember, 14 last week.
Oregon State
playing clean football, being
Oregon
disciplined. Yeah, you can see number 70, Isaiah Worrell.
3 yards deep.
You had it, Brock holding Anthony Smith.
When you have a quarterback who likes to escape the pocket, offensive tackles have to be very mindful of that with the sudden change of direction of the defensive ends they're blocking.
Of a kick, and when you feel that
Pushes him back to 2nd and 11. Quarterback keep. The ball's loose.
We've seen this.
Recovered, it looks like, by Lewis.
They do. Yep.
Play made by Devin Williams. A 4-yard gain on the play.
Oregon State's friend. We'll see if they can.
7 yards to go. 3rd down.
Off the clock. They've had it for more than 21
Brandon
minutes
Lewis
today.
is normally very
They led the
football
FBS in time
conscious,
of
but
possession
7
coming in.
consecutive games without an interception, putting the ball on the ground is not a thing that he normally does. He needs to be very careful, but this Minnesota defensive line has just had a
couple of yards short of the 20.
We've not mentioned the name really, Jeffrey Bossa yet, but Oregon's missing it. We talked about this
Looking to throw on 3rd down,
Griffin,
but he's dropped. Darius Green, the first to get to him, and another sack for this Minnesota defense.
Right away, ankle
The
injury in
4th
that
of the
first game of
day.
the year, and number 2 is close to getting back today.
And how many of those are by
We've not seen much
defensive
of him.
backs?
He is a difference maker
Clearly,
in that
Corey
front.
Heatherman trusting Darius Green along with Jack Henderson saying, hey, you're going to be out there covering, you're going to be a press man, and you can blitz. That's trusting your players right there to show as many versatile looks as you can.
So what can Parents do if he's given a chance? Let's see if they go to him. Right at the 41, gets tripped up. And you can hear the crowd go, and Parents said it with him. We will take a timeout.
We want it all. We want beards and lattes.
Great.
We want to be invited.
Great.
And not attend.
Great.
We want to take the shortcut.
You lost?
And not be in danger.
Reverse.
Sadly, we can't have it all. Except at Sport Clips, where we check in with the pros in men's hair and totally check out with pure, uninterrupted relaxation. Sport Clips. It's a game changer.
T-Mobile savings, take one.
Guys, focus. Let's not do fake falls. Just say, at T-Mobile, you get tons of benefits, and you can still save versus the other guys.
Happy to be here.
No fake stares, please.
Hi, I'm Patrick J. Adams.
Is that a shimmy? Just say, at T-Mobile, you can save on every plan, and you get great benefits with Magenta Status.
Keep doing whatever that is. I'll do the line. Check out the T-Mobile Savings Calculator to see how much you can save. And right now, we'll even pay off your phone when you switch.
4 years ago, in this alley, rioters threw a brick at my face and knocked out my teeth. Why? Because I was a police officer. And what did Kamala Harris do? While America's cities were burning, Kamala was defending peaceful protest. She raised millions to help bail rioters out of jail and supported defunding our police, making us all less safe. Kamala Harris is dangerous.
Preserve America PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Whoa, hold up. Someone just got BOGO free Blizzard treats, only in the DQ app. That someone could be you, but only for a limited time. BOGO free any size Blizzard treats. Get it now in the DQ app. DQ, happy tastes good.
Freshman phenom Dylan Raiola leads Nebraska against Northern Iowa. And Northwestern hosts Eastern Illinois tonight at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific, only on the Big Ten Network.
A drive summary brought to you by Kia, movement that inspires. We take a look at the last 4 drives from Minnesota. 3 of the last ones resulting in touchdowns by Darius Taylor. Look at the time it took for Minnesota to do it. They make quick work.
In the blink of an eye. Nothing gets an offense more juice than a defense doing their job, getting the ball right back to them.
Let's see how quickly this Minnesota offense can work on this drive. Inside 7 minutes left to play in the third quarter. Play action deep downfield and just overshoots his receiver. That's Daniel Jackson trying to get underneath it. Jackson going into this drive just 20 yards off of 2,000 on his career. He would have had that and more. They could have connected there.
And that's exactly what offensive coordinator Greg Harbaugh was probably thinking. Hey, let's get you 2K in style. And I promise you that's what everyone on the sidelines telling him too.
There's been 9 other receivers in Minnesota history that have 2,000 or more receiving yards in their career. Marcus Major now stays on his feet. What a run. Picks up the first down. Rumbling, stumbling into Nevada territory. McKinney finally makes the play, but it's a pickup of 18.
We asked offensive coordinator Greg Harbaugh, hey, that week 1 performance by Marcus Major, did you know he had that? He said, yeah, and the only downside is the world now sees our hidden secret. Look at that balance at such a big frame. 220 pounds to be able to stay upright and grab those extra yards.
Minnesota now 325 total yards. It was you that asked that question, and then it was him giving you, first of all, that wry smile before he gave you the answer. He said, I didn't want to, tip my hand too much in the preseason about what we knew we had with Marcus Major. Here's a look for Christian Driver back in, but tackled in the backfield, making the play, Keaton Crawford.
むしろいつもよりついてないんじゃ。
いや悪いつい
知らない男子が私のうなじになんで。
じゃあ
まさか女性ホルモンと運気マックスが本気出してきた。
今日は期末試験にも出した助動詞の慣用表現をいくつかおさらいします。まず助動詞の慣用表現。
ダメだ、全然授業に集中できない。
例えばこのメイウェルという表現ですが。
しかしどうってなんだよ。もっとこうあーとかふにゅーとか。
あのさ。
何々するの。
はい。何？一体何？
ごめん、やっぱ何でもない。
そうですか。何その思わせぶりな言葉、気になってしょうがないが。
快速待ちのため2分ほど停車いたします。
1日に2回も男に話しかけられるなんてかなり来てる。雑誌も占いもバカにできないな。なんなの？
俺の隣に頭にアリを飼っている女子高生がいる。何を言ってるかわからねえと思うが、俺にもわからん。
ようやく私特定の同じ愛車に違いしないとダメ。
バカだった。
お前たちがだよな。じゃあまた
当日に
カラオケはやろう。
花火なんて全然本当に初めての1学期が花火に行く相手すら見つけられないまま終わってしまうだって。本当にこれでいいのか。いや、よくない。誰でもいいから一緒に花火が見たい。 それでこの1学期を終わりにしたい。いるいる、社会不適合者が。夏休み前日にこんなところにいるのは確実に友達がいないやつらだ。こいつなら私でも。だが見ず知らずの男子を誘うのはさすがに無理だ。となるとあっちの女子だが、どうせなら地味かブスならよかったのに。同じシングルスとはいえ、あんな可愛い子とうまく話せるだろうか。話しかけて無視とかされたら、夏休み前に心が折れちゃうぞ。あの本、私も読んだことある。その本面白いよね。私、黒木智子、花火行かない？よし。
悪い、リサに付き合って合コンに間に合わねえか。手が待たせるよ。
なんか向こう。もしもの花火行けなくなったりずっと。もう誰か誘って。全立て。こんなにちょろ。いや、全然大丈夫だし。この誰もいない屋上が好きで、よくゆうちゃんと黒い服着てきたっけ。ここなら花火も少しは見えるだろうな。あんな建物あったか？新しくできたのかな。中学生、なんでここに？
先客いるぞ。どうする？
そうか。ここはもう私だけの場所じゃないんだ。
はい。ですけど。
ない。したかった。
一番上の部屋開けっぱなしだ。お姉さん、絶対に頭上げないでください。
なんだっけ？
あれに来いこ。
ガンを。あんなの乙女芸じゃ見る。楽しい。ガンを。なんだろう。
ああ、男も女も何人かいたな。
明るいグループ交際かよ。見てろ、夏休み明ける頃は。
Basically,
travel on sort of geodesic lines, and that naturally leads to paths that we explain as following the force of gravity.
So I know it, and I see it, and I can understand it, but I don't fully understand the warping of space-time. I've always struggled with that idea. It can be explained. I understand why gravity has this pull. I understand it, but I don't understand it. You know what I mean?
And that's actually going back to UAPs and everything. Like, people have a folk, like FOLK, worldview, folk physics, right? That is perfectly fine to get through your daily existence with, right? Like, you don't need to understand that space-time is malleable to navigate our everyday existence, right? Like, even though we know this table is mostly empty, right? Like, the electrons that are in those orbital shells actually are, fill up a very tiny amount of actual volume. Most of the hard objects we think about are just hard from the perspective of, sort of Coulomb forces, right? Like the electrical repulsion between electrons in my hand and the table. And so we have this folk sense that this table is dense, solid wood. But if you have a different perspective, from the perspective of, say, what an atom actually is, well, your mental view of what the table is actually very different, right? And so the same mental models of space-time, we have kind of this static stage-like view where, it's just kind of a box filled with stuff, right? And the box is kind of the static and eternal. The box itself is not made of anything. The box doesn't change. There's just stuff in the box bouncing around, doing stuff. That's the pure kind of Newtonian picture from the 1700s, basically. But the Einsteinian revolution was the recognition that actually that's not correct. That the box is actually meaningful, and can be deformed. In fact, increasingly modern physics is telling us that space-time is actually not fundamental. That it actually emerges from some other process, from some other structural dynamics that gives rise to something like space at a scale that we exist at. And so the whole direction of intellectual endeavor for the past few hundred years has been proposing essentially new accounts of the world by postulating and sort of painting a picture of reality in a way that is not obvious to your common sense, right? But can be formulated in sufficient mathematical precision that you can then design an experiment, that you can actually touch and interpret that supports that more wild theoretical proposal, right? So we now know in sort of modern physics that the world is a very weird place. Quantum mechanics is very weird. General relativity is very weird. It's not something that we have easily interpretable reference points in our common sort of experience. But that doesn't mean you just ignore science. No, I don't believe it, right? Okay, you can go about that, but we've constructed 21st century, civilization off of that knowledge, right? And so that is a trajectory I expect to continue, is that we will have to increasingly develop and then take seriously what would, to a common sense sort of folk model of reality, look crazy, right? Look wildly incompatible with our everyday intuition. And for folks that haven't been studying physics for a while, that would be quite a radical jump. But for folks that have been paying attention to physics for the past 100 years, we have had to make that uncomfortable jump from everyday intuition to pretty uncomfortable, non-intuitive pictures of the world. Quantum mechanics telling us that things are fundamentally, probabilistic, and general relativity telling us that there is no such thing as a preferred reference frame. There's no time slice through reality.
Can you explain those in detail?
Yeah, so quantum mechanics, which of course is still debated to this day exactly how to interpret it, but it essentially is a very well-defined mathematical explanation of the very small constituents of the universe, right? So we think the universe in this picture is basically defined by an object in quantum mechanics called the wave function, right? So there's no actual particle or electron. It's not a point particle, and it's not actually a field. It's actually this mathematical object called a wave function that we can write down equations for, and it basically tells us that any system can be defined, completely in terms of this one mathematical object. We can basically write down its energy and its its key properties, whether it's its spin, its charge, its mass, in terms of this wave function. And then we can evolve that wave function deterministically, meaning its state at any given time is just determined by this equation. So this wave function has this value now. We evolve it. This classic equation called the Schrödinger equation, which basically says this is how you evolve the wave function through time. There's a different process in quantum mechanics for measurement, meaning there's a wave function, which is basically a superposition of all possible states that you could observe that system in. And until you observe it, the wave function defines essentially the probability of finding that system in any particular state when you observe it. Essentially, you take the amplitude, you square it, and that's what you get. It's going to be the eigenvalues for that wave function. And so there's kind of this mysterious process in, canonical interpretations of quantum mechanics of, the deterministic evolution of the Schrödinger wave function, and then the non-deterministic measurement process, which collapses, quote unquote, the wave function into a particular value that you observe. Because in everyday life, we don't observe the wave function. We don't observe all different possible states. We observe, discrete, precise, states. And so there's been this mystery of how to interpret that, right? Like we have a classical picture of reality in terms of discrete states, and we have this mathematical description from quantum mechanics that actually says, well, that's incomplete, right? There are other possible states the universe has selected for somehow through some process of measurement. And so people have looked to then maybe that there's a space for consciousness. Is the brain or the mind collapsing wave function? I think it's a bit of like taking two mysteries and just saying they're the same mystery. It's a bit, you have to do a lot more work to kind of connect those two things together. But there is sort of a mystery to quantum mechanics itself. Just why do we see ourselves in a world that's discrete when quantum mechanics says, it should just be this smoothly evolving deterministic wave function of all possible states? We don't see that. But when you do the math, that predicts experiments. So we have to find some way of interpreting quantum mechanics to give ourselves this metaphysical answer to a question that the math itself isn't going to give you. The math is just the math. It predicts results of experiments. It works. So when I was taught in undergrad, when you go through this and you're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Like, what is measurement? And they go, it doesn't matter. Don't ask those questions. It works, right? The math works, gives you the experiments, it gives you the data. You can confirm you can confirm that in the experiments. You can build whatever devices you want. Go about your day. Don't ask the questions what it means. It's fine, right? And so this is the sort of divide between physics and philosophy. Physics is, come up with a mathematical model that can predict phenomenon that you can design experiments to test. If those experiments work, great. Go about your day. Philosophers want to know, well, what does it actually mean? What is it telling us about reality? Right?
Okay, I'm going to level with you.
Yeah.
I didn't really understand much. I don't know about you.
Nope.
I did my best.
Yeah.
But is the need to know, or the need for the maths to work, is that, in knowing that, is that how we know how to build things?
Yeah.
Because of that. That's, the stuff we use. Are there things we build, for example, certain technologies, or certain weapons, or certain radars, or communication devices, the science of relativity enables that to work.
100%.
But at the same time, there are things that work because of our mathematical understanding of quantum physics.
Yes, both. We use general relativity in GPS to correct for the fact that time ticks a little bit slower in orbit. Yeah. We use quantum mechanics to design sensors right now, right, that can be extremely sensitive, say, at detecting submarines, right? So they're called quantum sensors, extremely sophisticated, very tiny devices that can, they're very sensitive to tiny little, perturbations, right? So they're just extremely sensitive at detecting, say, acoustic noise or changes to the gravitational field in a particular area. And so we're using this science, right? We're using this basic understanding of physics to construct devices that we are using in our everyday life. And that's basically what human civilization does. It's just assembling more complex objects that exploit the degrees of freedom that the universe apparently allows, right? You can think about the rules of physics are like the rules of the game of the universe. We don't know all the rules, but when you know some of the rules, you can then, design objects that take advantage of those properties.
And if we knew more, we might be able to do crazier, wilder things.
Yeah.
Like mathematically, Einstein proved wormholes, right? Mathematically proved it.
I mean, yeah, there are solutions to the Einstein field equations that called the the Einstein-Rosen bridge. That is essentially allows disconnected regions of space-time to be connected in a way that is, topologically continuous, meaning there's no discontinuities. It doesn't blow up the math. You can have in classical formulations of general relativity, you can have wormholes. Whether those are real things that can exist in our universe, this is the difference between a model that is coming from one scientific paradigm that makes certain predictions about what's possible in that paradigm, and then reality itself. Right? Like we're just trying to develop maps that cover reality, right? And we don't have a map that right now covers all of reality in all of its different scales and all of its different features. We have good maps for different parts that we can observe, but we don't have like a single unified map for all of reality. And that's what we're trying to build, but we don't have one yet. So we can't really say definitively what is or isn't possible, right? So when people say, okay, these craft aren't, how could they get here from another star system? Nothing we have can go that fast. It would take light years to go these distances. Okay, but those are the current constraints that we have from our current understanding of physics and our current technology. It's quite hubristic to think that that's the ultimate limit imposed by reality itself. And an advanced intelligence, almost by definition, is going to have better understanding of the degrees of freedom that exist in the universe that it could develop technology for. So that's, it seems that's the territory you have to play in to try to account for what could be, advanced technology that's here.
Right, so, and things that seem quite advanced to us, because we're essentially a young species, could be quite a basic understanding of the universe.
Yeah, I mean, when we say basic, it's always kind of a relative game, right? Like, yeah, I mean, we are, we're evolved apes, right? Like we're relatively new on the scene.
Jumping up and down on it.
Yeah, like we just figured out, how to, burn some stuff underneath like a, aluminum tube and launch it into space. Like
we've solved propulsion.
Yeah, it's like, okay, that's the limit, right, guys? Of just blowing up some, having a controlled explosion, right, to launch something just like a few miles into space. That's like super advanced to us, right? I'm sure that will be looked to us crude in just like 50 years or 100 years, right? So everything is, and of course, our technological paradigm is changing quite rapidly in an accelerating pace, right? So we have, the sense that we're on the trajectory in the next 5, 10, 20 years of a lot of different technology, maybe not propulsion, basic physics, but understanding of biology, of computing converging in particular, so with AI, with synthetic biology. And so you try to project advanced intelligence, it isn't just going to be on this dimension of basic physics knowledge, right? Physics is sort of the foundational, block in that pyramid, but you build up a whole tower of knowledge, right, about how to construct complicated objects, right? The universe, at least to my mind, is like a system that's, essentially producing complicated objects, right? Like human beings are a complicated object, and there's a history of us, right? Like we didn't just sprout into existence, and there's this sort of scientific approach that's now been put forward. It's still kind of not the dominant paradigm, but it's a serious proposal called assembly theory, and this is just kind of this basic common sense idea that like any object that you encounter in your life, or say a molecule or a shoe, it's a result of some process of construction, right? It didn't just pop into existence. It has a characteristic history, right? So any given molecule, you can ask this question: what are the minimum number of steps that it takes to construct that object from like more basic components? So like a molecule of like H2O of water has just like three basic atoms that had to be constructed. Like the universe had to do some computational, in our language, chemical work to bring those three basic things together to create a new object called the H2O molecule. That's a relatively simple object, but it has a characteristic assembly pathway, right? You had to take 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen, and you had to bring them together in a sufficient physical space to react to generate, H2O. That's basic chemistry, but in the language of assembly, that path that it takes is its assembly path. And the assembly number is how many discrete steps, right, chemical reactions had to take place to create that object. So any object, basically you can construct its assembly number, its assembly pathway. What's the minimum number of steps it takes to construct a given object? And in this sense, even a small object like a complicated protein, right, or DNA, that looks, complicated but very small, could be very large in time, meaning its assembly pathway could be extremely large. Could be go, essentially 4 billion years back to the beginning of life on Earth. It took 4 billion years to create you and me, right? Like our assembly pathway goes back 4 billion years. So while we're relatively small objects, like in space, we're very large in time, and we embody a huge amount of information, right? So essentially, there's a it's like a blockchain, right? Like the universe is constructing complicated objects that embody their history. Right? And almost the definition of complexity is just essentially the number of steps that it takes to create that object, and also how many copies of it there are, right? So there are
a number of opportunities to create that.
Yeah,
because we can think it's like, are we alone? It's life universe. This is the rabbit hole I went down last night. Observable universe, 2 trillion galaxies, and I don't know how many suns. I was reading about the Drake equation, and it said that the ranges from naught, like just only in the Milky Way alone, but depending on how you enter the numbers, it's a range of naught to potentially, I think, millions of other life forms within the Milky Way alone. And so, if you start to think of the universe as the observable universe,
A dangerous
2 trillion
world
galaxies,
calls
but
for
the
inspired
unobservable universe
solutions.
now being... Because that was another thing, by the way. I've
Well-crafted
always lived with the idea the
equipment
universe
is
is 13.8 billion years old. No, the observable universe is 13.8 billion years old. We don't know how far. I don't know what your thesis of this is, whether it's infinite, but if there's trillions upon trillions of galaxies, or even if you go as far as infinite, the reality is there will be other life elsewhere at different stages.
Yeah, I think this is sort of the basic sort of law of large numbers, right? And then if it could happen here, you basically are forced to decide either the processes that give life to intelligent life are so difficult to sort of all chain together that probabilistically we're very, very unlikely, right? And therefore, within a certain space-time volume, you would only expect one advanced civilization to emerge, per say 1 million galaxies or whatever. If that was the math, then you would expect to be kind of the only one around, right? The nearest neighbor would be really far away. There's a economist and physicist named Robin Hanson who's probably done the best to try to bound this assessment, these basic parameters for the frequency of life in the universe. He's got a few papers that he's published on this, and it's using a few key assumptions, but basically kind of version of the Drake equation. The big the key feature, the key part of the argument, though, is like how difficult it is to create life like us. Like how many lucky rolls of the dice do you have to get to human, to have like advanced human intelligence from like basic chemical soup, right? Because that essentially.
How many leaps are there?
How many leaps are there? Because if it's only, let's say, if it's 3 really unlikely steps, right? And if say it takes 1 billion years of just like, probabilistic rolls of the dice for evolution to figure out that next trick that it needs to say to go from, basic sort of monocellular life to, multicellular complex life. There's some basic, biophysical tricks that have to be figured out. And if it just takes 1 billion years to figure out each trick, okay, after 3 billion years, maybe each trick takes 1 billion years to kind of like randomly figure out. Then that's going to set like a parameter that you would put into the equation to say how unlikely it is for life to evolve given certain conditions. And he does his best to kind of bound that. And you can look at this paper, come up with his math. I think there are wide uncertainties, though, right? Where I think you can go to the one side of that assessment and basically say it's relatively common, meaning that the special tricks that life on Earth figured out, any planet with suitable conditions, in the galaxy could probably figure out, right? And so you do the math, and it's probably reasonably likely that at least a small number in the galaxy figured it out. But if they figured it out 1 billion years before us, that's a lot of time for advanced life to develop systems of technology to explore the rest of the galaxy and actually, say, develop self-replicating probes that could basically colonize the galaxy in a few, million years. And so this sets a boundary constraint on, what sorts of life you would expect to encounter. Either it's life that's like remakes the matter that it comes into contact with, in which case, well, we haven't really seen that. Like the UAPs that we're encountering are not like taking over the solar system and turning us all into, computer goo for its own machines, right? Like that hasn't happened. So you have to sort of exclude that as like part of the explanation for what sort of life could be coming here. It's some other form of intelligence that has no objective to turn us into, computronium glue, right? So you'd have to load in other assumptions about, well, not just the pure technological development of advanced intelligence in the universe, but almost like sociopolitical, right? Like what sort of civilization, right, emerges? What sort of political governance obtains in an advanced intelligence civilization?
Do you think sometimes with this we think too much along the lines of what we are and expect something similar? Like we start with the premise that would DNA would it be carbon-based life forms? Because it wouldn't have to be carbon-based. We know it doesn't have to be, but we start with that and we assume it's going to develop into maybe a being that has 2 arms and 2 legs and some kind of cognitive brain function. But is that arrogant to think like that?
Certainly. I think
sorry, just to throw something there. My brother's here. I remember this. I always remember this. We had a biology teacher called Mr. Fuchs, and I always remember him saying, if there is life on other planets, it probably looks nothing like we look. The chance of it looking the same is infinitely small.
Yeah, we actually don't really have a good theory of life, which you would kind of want to have a more fundamental theory of life to then answer the question, what does life look like in other paths of development, right? That's kind of the question, right? How much...
Sorry, I'm jumping in a bit. But even like replicating cells, is that a fluke?
Yeah, and we actually don't have good, like there's maybe within certain narrow domains of, say, exobiology or...
A steady stream of protected income can be just what you need to stay in the moment. For nearly 160 years, generations have put their trust in Pacific Life's strength and stability. Because life isn't about what tomorrow brings. It's what you do with it. Ask a financial professional about Pacific Life.
The number 13 original Italian, sliced right in front of you, topped off with the juice.
Just what the doctor ordered.
Say what?
No, really.
Get this man a number 13 Italian, stat.
Thank you. The number 13 original Italian, only at Jersey Mike's.
To help save for our home, we stopped going on trips and giving each other expensive gifts. We handmade them instead. That one took me 3 weeks. Getting pre-qualified for a home loan is easier. Only took like 3 minutes. It's you.
It's me. When they're dehydrated from heat, flu, or exertion, get Pedialyte, the #1 doctor-recommended brand for hydration. Wait, isn't this for kids?
And for me.
Adults. Pedialyte. Really?
Crazy, huh?
Come on, really?
Really?
Huh. Grown-ups. All right, then.
It's too hot to have this conversation.
Too hot. Right. Well, when you're feeling super hot or super not, it's Pedialyte. Yes, really.
At Verizon, trade in any phone, any condition for the new iPhone 16 Pro with Apple Intelligence. Phones are going to be flying to Verizon. New and existing customers can...
Mike's thing.
Derek Carr leads the Saints against Dak, CD, and the Cowboys. Touchdown! Or the Rams take on the Cardinals. Wow! Sunday on Fox. Check for the game in your area.
Fox College football is sponsored by Pacific Life, creating financial security for nearly 160 years. Winner goes to the Rose Bowl 2009. Oregon ends up with a victory. LaMichael James with a massive day. Big first down for Jeremiah Masoli late. Pac-10 at the time. First trip to the Rose Bowl since 1995 in that moment for the Ducks.
I don't think, and look at the rush offense today, that is extraordinary. I don't think there's been many days like this they play this game, because it's usually in the rain and the fog and the cold in November. It has turned into just a gorgeous afternoon.
Beautiful day for football, and Oregon taking advantage as they will run it one more time straight ahead. Lamar to set up second down. See if Oregon maybe gets some depth here out of this game. And I know they want to finish. And Dan Lanning used that word as much as any word last year about this game, but there's an opportunity with how long this season might get, right? The expanded playoff, as they'll drop this off for Sadiq, and what a weapon he is. There's a marker down at the 28.
I think that's going to be a hold on Ferguson.
Illegal block in the back. Offense number 3. 10-yard penalty. Repeat, second down.
Sadiq is a unique weapon when you talk about these tight ends being some of the most productive in all of college football. There you do see the shove in the back. Ferguson trying to help out his tight end battery mate. Is there a better tight end group in college football?
Along with Herbert? I don't think so.
And they're all a little bit different, right? I mean, they can block, they can run, they can catch. Utah's up there. A whole bunch of depth.
Second down, Gabriel. He's got Lamar in front of him. Gabriel goes to the next level, and that's whipped to Tez Johnson. First down.
There is, you have said this on just about every one of his throws down the field, Jason. The authority with which he is throwing it.
Yeah. You know about the deep ball, but this type of ball, the intermediate, really nice. Sorry. Colby Singleton, the transfer from Southern Utah by way of Liberty.
That one was about 12 inches behind, and that gave Singleton a chance. One of those veteran players on the back end of it, 34 starts in 2 other spots. And guess what? He's human.
Gabriel?
Yeah, he can throw a ball just a little bit off.
We said that about Bo Nix last year, too.
Yeah.
This offense has been great for quarterbacks. One right-handed, one left-handed. Gabriel, incomplete. He wanted Justice Lowe. It caught a hand. Third down.
Yeah, that one almost caught the umpire right in the head as he ducks out of the way. And that's one with a lot of people around you. We saw Lowe earlier with a tremendous block. But that's one through traffic the youngster would love to corral.
Keith Faverchak, the umpire's okay.
Yes.
Third down and 10.
Second chainsaw for those counting.
Empty set, it's a screen. They run a lot of those to the far side. And Lamar breaks free. Jaden Lamar is gone.
I don't know what this play call is, but I'm just going to call it the cavalry of humanity. Look at the big boys get out in front. Just, again, a tremendous block right on the edge. I think that's Sadiq, the tight end. And the Lake Stevens High School
smoky, flame-grilled, and made your way. Come experience the flame-grilled difference with 2 Whopper Juniors for just $5.
Full-time fans, you give the season everything you've got, and I've got my eyes on you. I'm the Modelo recruiter, and I'm rewarding the most passionate fans. Because that kind of dedication deserves a Modelo.
Sundays on Fox, a new legend is born.
Hell yeah.
He's a hero.
There he is. You're disrespecting a champion. Is that ring even real? Your name is Made in China. It's pronounced Madden China, okay? It's Gaelic.
Universal Basic Guys. All new Sunday at 8, 7 Central on Fox.
It's a huge day of football on Fox, and we kick things off with Big Noon Saturday. Ohio State faces off with Marshall. Then Utah battles Oklahoma State, and Baylor takes on Colorado. Woo! It all kicks off with Big Noon Saturday on Fox.
Jaden Lamar into the end zone for a long touchdown. Dylan Gabriel, a big smile for his buddy. That looked a little bit like some of the stuff that Gabriel ran at UCF in Oklahoma, didn't it?
Yep. I love those hugs. You put all that work in, all that time, and James has gotten to eat. Whittington's gotten to eat, and now the youngster Lamar, the heads that played last week. That touchdown's a little sweeter than the heads up one a week ago.
He picked up the ball in the end zone after it got dropped at the 1-yard line. Very smartly, and now Oregon State will have it, trailing 46-14. This is a dominant performance for Oregon, which they needed because they opened the season number 3, only behind Georgia and Ohio State. You win a couple games, not exactly a cruise on a motorcycle against Idaho, 24-14. Some odd plays there, a couple of 4th downs. They survived last week on the field goal and the special teams basically winning the day, to use an Oregon term. And so they're on their way to 3-0. This is a totally different looking team than we saw on tape.
Yeah, this is what Allison said. This is an identity shaper. Like, this is who we are. We're humming in every phase of it this afternoon.
McCoy sees the pocket collapse on him, and he goes down. He is officially sacked. It's a loss of 1. Looked like Tuioti was in there. And it's 2nd and 11.
Well, my big guy Caldwell did all the work.
339.
Yeah, 339, not 340, 339. Thank you very much.
Well, you joke, but he's worked on
yes,
that.
He has.
To be in playing shape, to be able to play
That's right.
this late in the game is impressive.
It's awesome. Done a lot of cardio work, not just the running, it's the biking, it's the stuff in the pool. To have kind of stamina, because he's a difference maker.
2nd and 11 for McCoy. Down the middle, and that's on target. It's going to be a 1st down, caught by Walker. Trent Walker just has this rivalry deep in his veins.
Yeah, you're going to see this little in cut come right here, and that is a bang play. Tyler Turner is all over it there. That ball, that was kind of a Dylan Gabriel conviction throw. Like, this thing's going to get there in a hurry because there's no margin for error.
Walker's best friend growing up, he said, was a big Duck fan. Very tight relationship with a lot of Oregon fans. As this comes to the sideline, that's a nice ball from McCoy. Gets it to the tight end Caulfield, and it's a gain of 13.
And obviously, everything from here on out for Trent Bray is going to be no huddle. Going to have to push the envelope.
They're going to play a pretty Mountain West heavy schedule this year with the Pac-2 as it is. As Uiagalelei tries to rush. This comes near side. That's knocked away by Dante Manning to set up 2nd and 10. But in the future, things are going to change for Oregon State with the announcement this week of the Pac-12 and its expansion.
Yeah, Oregon State and Washington State not relying on anybody else. You know, just kind of not playing the waiting game. They were the one to say, nope, we're going to put this in our own hands and steer the direction of the ship moving forward, adding 4 and more to come.
It is good to see the Apple Cup being played, this game being played, as you said, off the top of the show. Jam Griffin on the run. It'll be 3rd down. So if you haven't heard, the expansion goes like this to this point. The Pac-12 starting in 2026 has added San Diego State, Boise State, some powerhouse programs here, Fresno State, Colorado State. So they're at 6 at this point in 2026.
A lot of states.
Yeah, it's a wall of states. Third down and 6. McCoy. That's knocked away by Manning again. Really nice day for him.
Can't you just see the difference, Jason, of the separation?
Yes.
I mean, the Oregon guys are just running free, and there is Manning, maybe a little fistful of jersey.
That might be interference.
Yeah, that's probably interference. Yep. But he is in the hip pocket, and that is now 0 for 4 for these Beavers on third down in the second half. Remember, Dan Lanning said we got to fix the third down and get off the field. It's pretty good adjustments and some pretty tight coverage.
That's what he told Allison early on in the ball game. This is a fourth down. They had a big one early. They'll double team Birch, and McCoy misses. He had Wells coming toward Caulfield.
Different parts of sort of the scientific communities, there's some consensus, but really no universal consensus as to the actual emergence of life. There's different stories, like you need some sort of autocatalytic chemistry, sort of, physics, sort of computational chemists look at that sort of explanation. You need some sort of bootstrapping mechanism as just the basic foundation. But like, could you just have RNA-based life? Do you need DNA? Could you just have, like viruses? Are they a form of life? Viruses, don't have, they can't endogenously replicate. They need other creatures to survive. There's like different basic chemical substrates, right? Could you have, maybe silicon-based life forms, not carbon-based life forms? Maybe the basic atomic chemistry works out. You can create complicated structures. There's even more exotic forms. It's like, well, what do we mean by life, right? Life, this is what I was talking about, assembly theory, is like, we don't actually have a good, clean definition of life, right? This is what I was saying. You need to have some more abstract theoretical model that you can mathematically define. These are the complexity conditions that we say, beyond this threshold that we can define mathematically, this object is a living object, right? And it's different, not like in an ontological way. It's not like, oh, there's now this like new life thing that exists. There's just a criteria that you're mathematically defining that, okay, when you have just amino acids going back and forth and doing reactions, that's not life. But as soon as you get some, say, autocatalytic structure that generates a reinforcing pattern that it survives over a sufficient long period of time and generates, in, say, assembly theory, multiple copies of complex objects, we would sort of put the label life around that, right? And then if we were looking out into the universe at another planet, we now have a mathematically abstracted definition, right? That isn't specified in terms of carbon or certain, sort of biological features on Earth that we're applying over there. It's a much more abstract, mathematically, general model of life, and we can then look at the different chemical processes or different structures that are being formed in a different planet and say, okay, that shares the same mathematical features of complexity that we have defined in terms of our theory of life. Therefore, that's life, right? That's kind of what you have to do. You can't just like have this like gut feel. Does it look like life, right? That's not a scientific model, right? Scientific model has to have like mathematical predictions. This is what life is. This is the the system of explanations that we've constructed, and then we can go out and we can say, in a more objective way, this is what life is. And importantly though, having such a theory then allows you to distinguish between objects, because any object you encounter, right? You don't know you don't know its history, right? So the key question then is, what's a natural object versus what's a artificial object, right? And so assembly theory actually kind of gives you a way to distinguish between those two things, because a natural process of generating complicated objects, which we call, say, life, tends to generate multiple copies, right? So they have both a high assembly number, meaning there's a long chain of steps to take that nature had to take to create that complicated object, like evolution in particular, and there's many copies of them. Right? That's what DNA is. There's many, many trillions and trillions of copies of the same object on planet Earth that all have this very long assembly history. And so life, essentially gives you this explanation of what life is. I mean, assembly theory gives you an explanation of what life is in terms of things that have a high assembly number, meaning this long process of sort of accumulated construction, and there's many copies. It also gives you an explanation of, say, artificial objects, which also have usually a long history, but limited number of copies, right? So there's not too many computers, say, relative to DNA in the world, right? There's a lot of computers, but not that many relative to DNA. There's probably tens of orders of magnitude more DNA copies than copies of any particular computer.
But we could get to the point where the evolution, the next evolution of society is it's only artificial life or something. And
yeah.
so other civilizations that we come into contact with have reached the artificial stage, the biological stage. It's unnecessary, or just those interplanetary steps are only performed by artificial life.
That is exactly, you just completely short-circuited where I was going to go with this, because it's exactly what you can see human civilization heading. Kind of smart, you know. Well, why am I even here, you know? And that's because we're in this interesting moment where, you know, the history of life on planet Earth is sort of this natural process of selection, which generates objects, usually requires multiple copies, because nature has to basically explore many different possibilities to find one that works. That's because it's a basic search algorithm. The function of higher level intelligence, though, is it gives you like a new capability that didn't exist for most of life's evolution, which is to choose pathways for future exploration, right? More intentionally. Right, and that then generates a much different pattern of complex objects, right? To the point where if you let that run for a while, you're not going to be able to distinguish anymore those different parameters, right? There's going to be many copies of things that all have a very long assembly history. That, from this functional perspective, assembly theory would be identical to kind of, you know, the traditional processes of life, you know, on Earth, but would be entirely sort of technologically directed. And so this is what you would then be looking for sort of advanced signatures of technology in a different civilization or here, right? That maybe these objects that we're encountering are products of essentially, you know, advanced sort of 3D printing, nanoassembly, sort of molecular construction. They're like one-time use. They can just, you know, spin up the machine. It spits out this, you know, orb or craft for a particular purpose. It's kind of like just one-time use, right? It's like things are extremely cheap to create, right? So they're kind of, you know, it's also why they wouldn't care too much if they, you know,
kind of their version of the drone.
Yeah, it's extremely cheap. Like China can produce, you know, millions of drones, right, coming out of these factories. Imagine if you could do that. You know, you could customize each drone in a 3D printer and send it off to do a particular mission. You wouldn't care if it comes back. It's just whatever. Like I can just spit out any number of copies that I want. And the part that is more uncomfortable for us, though, is that we're comfortable thinking about in terms of copies of technological objects, like drones or computer probes or whatever. We're less comfortable thinking about it in terms of biology, right? But biology is a structured piece of material, right? Like we don't know how to like create synthetic organisms to the degree of complexity that we can create synthetic, you know, pieces of technology, right? Like complicated, you know, aircraft or drones. But we're heading in that direction of being able to create synthetic life forms, right? We're like, this is on the trajectory for the next few decades. And so you can play this out, and those things could start to converge, where there's not much of a distinction anymore for, say, 3D printing a biological organism to perform a certain function, and 3D printing, you know, drone-like orb craft, right? Those are just different morphologies of the same basic component to produce something to perform certain, like, you know, different functions. So this is.
But wouldn't you be better at 3D? Wouldn't it be better to 3D print computers, synthetic computers, rather than synthetic biology? Because you know, it's less resilient, especially over long distances. There has to be different inputs. You know, for a computer, it's just energy. For us, it's more than energy. Well, it's energy, but it's in the form of, you know, we have to have water. We have to have, you know, like a food energy. It's a computer seems more resilient, or you could build it more resilient.
I think
Does it come down to whether you think biological consciousness is important?
I think form follows function in just an abstract sense. And so, yeah, like interstellar travel, you probably don't want to have like biological components in there because they're probably not going to endure long enough. But when you're, say, exploring a particular new planet, right, there's a lot of flexibility that comes from having a biological, like, avatar, a biological robot, right, that can manipulate objects, that can walk around, that can do things. Like, most of our robots are pretty crude, right? And, you know, any given robot that's made of material is going to have some sort of maintenance, you know, like, requirement. And so it might just be pretty, we don't actually know the limit, like, which is more difficult to construct. If it turns out it's actually not that hard to create, you know, synthetic biological robots, then those could be very useful, right, in a particular context. Say you're on a planet and you want to explore. You want to collect biological samples, you want to go fly around, you want to drop off some things, pick up some things. You know, maybe you want to interact with living creatures on that planet, and maybe you need some physical embodiment to engage with those people that wouldn't just want to talk to a glowing orb in the sky.
What would be the difference between like a synthetic biological peat versus a naturally born peat?
Well,
is it purely the assembly process?
This is getting more to like my cup of tea and like philosophy of mind and philosophy of identity. And there's lots of thought experiments that philosophers love to construct in terms of trying to tease apart our intuitions about these things. Like, what do we think about peat as like an object in the universe? Like how coherent of a concept is that when I say take different parts of peat and I remove them over time, right? When does peat go away? If I replace each neuron in your brain one for one with a silicon chip that replicates exactly the activation patterns of firing, maybe even simulates the internal neurochemistry of that neuron, and I do that one-for-one swap, in a controlled process, say over a long period of time, to the point where it's 90% biology, 10% silicon, all the way to 90% silicon, 10% biology, and I keep doing that until there's no biological neurons left, and everything is now in silicon. I've now, potentially, replaced your entire mental apparatus, the thing that's doing your thinking, the embodiment of your conscious identity. I've now instantiated that in a new substrate, right? Can I make copies of that now? What happens to you? These are the basic questions of philosophical, identity. And then there's the question: okay, well, if I can then, all the sensory information that your brain gets from your body that creates a world for you to exist in, that gives you a sense that you are an embodied creature in a real world, I can simulate that. And this is, of course, the question of a simulation, right, or a virtual reality. How do I distinguish between, a simulated reality and a quote real reality?
But is consciousness only a biological phenomenon?
Well, yeah, these are related, but maybe different questions, right?
If you're removing my brain, one molecule at a time, replacing it with silicon, is that? What am I at that point? If I've got the same personality, the same decision-making process, still tell everyone to fuck off? Am I still Pete, or am I a synthetic Pete?
Yeah, I think you need a philosophically grounded theory of identity to answer that question. And I think there are, right now, different sort of vociferously competing camps. There are some people that believe, yes, 100%, there's no difference a meaningful difference in terms of the consistency and coherence of conscious identity and memory, and all the things we think about when it's like, who am I, between instantiation in wetware in the biology and instantiation in sort of silicon hardware. All that really matters from this view is the pattern of sort of computational information processing that takes place in your brain. If I can emulate that to a sufficient, maybe, arbitrary degree of accuracy in a different substrate, say, silicon hardware, then all of the features of Pete come along with that, right? It's just, all that it is consciousness, it just reduces to patterns of computational information processing, sort of functional relationships between different processes in the brain. If I can replicate those in a different substrate, then I get consciousness along for the ride. So from that theory of consciousness in the mind, you could have fully, equivalently conscious, morally valuable minds in silicon. There are different, camps in philosophical schools that reject that actually hold that there's one version that's like biological essentialism, that there's some specialness to biology, be hard to motivate. There's some.
I agree. By the way.
Yeah.
Because it's not synthesized.
Well, the question though is like what conditions, like that experiment that I just did of like mental thought experiment of replacing one for one, like a biological essentialist would have to specify some criteria along that process that says, is it 50%? That's when consciousness blinks out, right? I mean, we haven't done the experiment. This actually could be done as maybe like Elon in 20 years could do this experiment, maybe, is like take a human brain. Again, the ethics of this might be questionable, but like in theory, you could have somebody like self-report as their brain is being replaced with silicon chips. and they could, describe your, have a whole battery of sort of self-reported metrics of their first-person subjective experience, and you would try to measure using, that plus maybe really highly precise sort of functional fMRI to try to see, like, does anything change in either the functional MRI, the patterns of activation, or the self-reported consciousness experiences as you sort of replace their brains with sort of silicon equivalents. And you could see, is there a disruption?
I don't think you get to a hard line.
I mean, this is where philosophy is somewhat struggles with answering the question. It just gives you a better way of defining the right question to ask. And then there are some questions that maybe you could do experiments on in the future to get a better handle on. And there's others that maybe will remain, right? And you just have to, like, feel comfortable with a certain sort of intuitive orientation, right?
Yeah.
Some people are just really comfortable with the materialist orientation, that the universe is fundamentally just physical stuff all the way down, and that anything that's like emergent is just sort of a higher level description, but not fundamental. And there's other, folks that are more comfortable with, say, a dualistic picture of the world, where actually there is physical stuff and then there's mental stuff. And the mental stuff, or qualitative phenomenal experience, is a equally equivalent and important, like, irreducible feature of reality, just as much as physical stuff. That's like property dualism or substance dualism. And then there's, versions in between. I sort of find myself attracted to sort of versions in between, which are essentially physicalists from the outside and sort of, conscious realists from the inside. In the sense, yeah.
Because I'm thinking, like, consciousness is it really just biologically programmed into us? It's just how the brain operates. Because when you see somebody can get brain damage, they can come with a completely different personality. Often. Something's altered in them, and so part of their personality is from there. So is it just biological synthesis inside us? Like, do I really exist as me as Pete, or am I as my brain telling me that Pete exists?
I mean, every day you wake up and you're reconstituting your personal identity from memory and from the coherence of your physical surroundings and a sort of embodied continuity. But there's a break in your conscious identity right when you go to sleep, right? And yet we have no philosophical issues with that. Like, Pete this morning is the same Pete as last night. Even though, there is no, like, conscious chain that connects those two, right? There's a physical chain, the same physical material, right, was sitting in the bed tonight, and the one that woke up, and it has the same verbal reports about who it is and who it is. But, you, first-person experience, have to rely, you have to trust your own memory, right? That could all have been simulated, right? You could have just been loaded in with the program that says, this is the current state of Pete, and this current state of Pete is going to believe that it had all the has all the memories of being the Pete from the last week, 2 months, 45 years, whatever, right? So this basic skeptical philosophical line of argument can sort of always be taken. Like, you could always be the victim of some extremely advanced manipulation, simulation. There's no, I think, bulletproof philosophical argument to sort of anchor belief in a, like, irreducible, high confidence way. You just have to kind of get through your life. Like, radical skepticism is not a survival function, right? Like, if you don't believe in the bus, that's fine. But those people who disbelieve in the reality of buses don't tend to stick around or propagate their ideas. And so, yeah, this is where the abstract philosophical discourse kind of can sort of delaminate from, okay, well, you have to live. You have to go through existence with certain basic assumptions. And this is where, like, we are technologically, though, potentially going to create the ability to simulate experiences with an increasing degree of realism and fidelity. And we could get to the point where we have a combination of, where it's not a philosophical argument anymore. It's almost like a real, practical, almost policy question of, like, if people can plug themselves into, Neuralink +++, right? And can, flip off the external sensory switch and flip on a computational generated environment that to their first-person experience looks like a real environment, we would have to ask this question then, okay, like, how real is that simulated world, right? And then,
to say that this isn't that.
Exactly, right? And so there's a great philosopher, David Chalmers, who wrote a book a few years ago called Reality Plus, that examines this question and takes very seriously the reality of virtual worlds. And he basically tells a, pretty straightforward argument that, on sort of 3 different buckets of philosophy, right? The first bucket is what's real. The second is how do we know what we know about what's real? And the third part is, well, what's valuable about living in any world. And so he tries to basically say that his argument is that simulated worlds, virtual worlds, are just as real as any other world that we could write down properties for. And that we have the same degree of sort of relationship of knowledge in a virtual world as we have to a stipulated real world. And that you can actually have real purpose, real meaning, real plans and relationships and fulfillments and desires in a simulated world as in a real world. And so he tells this whole argument, and his upshot is that actually virtual worlds, simulated worlds, are no different than a real world. In fact, they're just different labels that we would give. And so it's fundamentally like a meaningless question to ask. It's just a different sort of stance on how you think about what world you exist in with respect to some maybe other supernatural world, right? That relationship between any given observer in any given world is always going to be limited, is always going to be subject to some set of constraints, and fundamentally disadvantaged with respect to whatever generated or whoever generated that world. And there's arguments from basic physics that sort of have this, you can motivate this idea in a sense of like it from bit, right? So in the 20th century, there's a physicist named Bryce DeWitt, and he started looking at the foundations of physics and quantum mechanics, and there was this sort of development of quantum information theory at the time that started to look at, okay, the basic principles of our theories of computation and our basic theories of quantum mechanics started to basically, come together. And it motivated him to think about, well, actually, the sort of the basement of reality isn't physical stuff, it's pure information. It's just bits. And so the stuff of the world comes from bits. So that was like this sort of first articulation of this idea that is very conciliant with the simulation hypothesis, right? And the simulation hypothesis, it's actually it from bit from it, meaning the its that we experience in our world come from bits, but those bits are being run, those are usually the software layer of some other hardware layer in a different reality. And so you can just chain those together, philosophically. You can just have an infinite chain of it from bits, from its, from bits, et cetera. I don't think it gets you anywhere, right? Because any given pattern of bits in this sense is just, that's what reality is. And so if you have a simulated pattern of bits and a real pattern of bits, there's no distinction. They're just patterns of bits. But
the question goes back to what created the its.
I mean, yeah, this is the fundamental ontology, right?
And there always has to be a starting point somewhere.
Yeah, this is why I philosophically myself, I'm attracted more from an it from bit from consciousness kind of idea that actually places consciousness at the root of reality, and that you need something like the properties of consciousness to sort of undergird basic physics. And so that's sort of, there's a philosopher named Philip Goff, who I really like. I don't have, I don't subscribe to his entire framework, but I really attracted to this idea that goes back to one of the more famous philosophers and mathematicians of the 20th century, Bertrand Russell. And he first pointed this out, 1920s, but it kind of like, nobody read his book, Analysis of Matter, until like 20 years ago. And he basically made this simple observation that like all the physics, the sort of mathematical paradigm that goes back to Descartes, is really just all about providing a mathematically defined description of reality in terms of the pattern of constraint, right? Physics basically tells us like the rules of chess. Think about, you could write down the rules of chess, but the rules of chess don't tell you what the chess pieces have to be made of. It doesn't say whether they have to be made of wood or glass or metal. The rules of chess are completely agnostic with respect to the question, what are chess pieces made of? It just says chess pieces have to have a certain functional form, and given that functional form, meaning a bishop or a knight or a pawn, then they have certain basic constraints. A pawn can only go, these steps forward or backwards, or forward, to take a piece, et cetera. And that's what physics is. Physics is just the rules of chess. Physics doesn't tell you what pieces have to be made of. And so we have this cognitive slip with physics because we're used to, the visualizations and descriptions and diagrams in physics textbooks, and people, the terms of electrons and protons and neutrons, like we have some sort of mental image of like a little dot thing, and maybe it's like a color and it's spinning around, it's got some sort of, property. But that's not in physics, right? That's just our mental imagery, right? Physics just says an electron has certain properties mathematically defined, mass, spin, and charge. That's it. There's nothing else in physics. That's all that an electron is just certain numbers in equations that behave a certain way. It doesn't say what an electron is. And so there's an open question, though, at the heart of physics, which is what is the stuff of reality? right? Even Stephen Hawking said, right, like even if we get to a final theory of physics, it'll just be a pattern of equations, it'll be a system of equations. The question is though, like what breathes fire into the equations? What makes there to be a world for those equations to describe, right? There's some isness at the heart, at the beating sort of center of existence that to me is a separate argument you have to give, is what consciousness is.
So if there's no consciousness, if there's no intelligent life, no consciousness, is there even a universe?
Well, yeah, we're getting, I mean, almost trivially, yes, right? In the sense that, it depends on how you want to define like a universe, right? Like you could.
Does this all exist without us, or is it the interface of the brain and physics that creates this?
I think to answer those philosophical questions, you need to point to a certain philosophical theory of metaphysics that you want to motivate independently, and then say, I have good reasons to think the metaphysics of the world is like this. And therefore, when you ask me that question, I can say no because of my independently motivated theory of metaphysics. And in my independently motivated theory of metaphysics, consciousness is sort of the intrinsic nature of causation. Physics is the extrinsic nature of causation. It's just a pattern of constraint viewed from the perspective of an observer who experiences that pattern of constraint. So those are like two sides of the same coin, right? A door only has by definition two sides. There's no such thing as a one-sided door. Right? So just like in my theory of causation, there's no such thing as just a physical reality, right? That would be the same sort of nonsensical way of saying there's a one-sided door, right? In my theory of causation, patterns of constraint, which we call physics, go hand in hand with, almost metaphysically require some receptivity at the base of reality that experiences the pattern of constraint. So there's both an intrinsic nature of reality and an extrinsic nature of reality. The intrinsic nature is consciousness. The extrinsic nature is patterns of constraint, is what we call physics. And that whole thing is just causation playing itself out. Causation is just the process of the universe, executing every possible, sequence that it can, and then selecting down for any given observer is going to only see some subset of all the different sequences the universe is running.
I can't help but start at the most basic starting questions, and I'm always, there's two questions, well, it's kind of three questions I'm always thinking about, and I'm always interested in the different theses on it. Is the how it started, why actually throw another one in, why then, I mean, in terms of observable universe, we say 13.8 billion years ago, but why then? If not then infinite, so steady state. When it did happen, when say Big Bang Theory is correct, why did it create molecules, and why did it create atoms, and why did it create, I don't know what the basic, you'll know better than me, the basic building blocks. Why did the laws of physics get created as they are? Why is the speed of light that? Why is there a nuclear force, a strong and a weak? And why does this all happen? Like, there's no logic to it. There's no reason for a universe to spawn out of nothing.
Yeah.
And my head blows up.
There's, I think, 3, maybe 4 different branches of that tree that you can sort of decide to go down. One is just like brute fact acceptance. Not trying to answer the why question, just accept this is what it is. I'll never be able to know it. Again, that's the least satisfying branch, but that's like one branch. It's just bite the bullet. Random stuff happens. This is the world we happen to be in. It is what it is. Don't ask any more questions. The second is a supernatural explanation, meaning God or some higher entity sort of picked this particular nature of the universe to bring into existence. Right? There are infinitely many that capital He, he could have created, and he created this one for purposes that are beyond our human understanding. That's like one branch of the tree, kind of a supernatural explanation. The third is what you might call like an anthropic sort of selection explanation. This is this is probably the more popular, in scientific circles now, that there are actually an infinite number of different possible universes that actually exist. In string theory, this is sort of like the string vacua. There's like 10 to the 500 different string theory solutions. And most of those, maybe almost all of them, give rise to sort of physically uninteresting, unstable, very, boring universes. Only the tiny number of solutions in, say, that string vacua space give rise to complex objects that can ask the question. So if you're a complex object asking the question, why do I exist in a world that can allow complex objects? Well, there's kind of there's an observer selection effect. You wouldn't be around to ask that question in any other universe. And this is essentially the fine-tuning question, right? Sort of the universe that we exist in seems to be fine-tuned for life. There's all sorts of physical parameters, like actual numbers in our physical theories that give values to certain constants, right? So a big one is the cosmological constant, which essentially sets the expansion rate of the universe itself, which we know is expanding. The universe, in fact, the rate of acceleration of the rate of expansion of the universe is actually accelerating. And it has a particular value. If that value was a little bit bigger, the universe would have inflated much faster than would have allowed, say, stable galaxies to create, or even stable forms of matter to exist in. If it was a little bit smaller, the universe would have like recollapsed to, like a big crunch. So the value of that cosmological constant seems to be, suitable for the existence of large-scale structure to obtain without, any major disruptions to, the existence of the basic predicate of life. And so that's like the main popular explanation is that, for example, that cosmological constant could take on, any arbitrary value throughout the multiverse. In those universes where it takes on a variable that's not suitable for life, there's no life around to ask the question. So we happen to be around in this universe only because we're in the one that has the right values. It's kind of an unsatisfying explanation. And then there's the fourth, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I buy that. I buy the fact that there's an idea of multiverse and it's A/B test and this is the one that has all the right parameters for us to reach this point where you and I are sat here having this conversation. But it still doesn't give me the answer to the spawning of the multiverse because there's no answer to where does this universe exist. It exists and what's it expanding into? There's no answer to that. But what stops there being an infinite number of universes in different dimensions existing? Because it comes to exist out of nothing into nothing.
Yeah, I mean, this is where physics, ends and philosophy starts, is like, well, the prime mover, right? This is, in any sort of version of this argument, whether it's in metaphysical context for the whole universe or just in an epistemological sense of like, how do we know what we know, is different. Either there's some sort of like infinite regress that you have to bite, that there's just, an infinite chain of explanations that will never end, or there's some brute stopping point, some absolutely solid foundation upon which you can then base everything else. So either that's God or some supernatural principle that you point to that anchors the world, like your worldview. There's somewhere in between those.
I don't buy that either.
So there's a great book that you would, I think, appreciate because it tries to go in between these different explanations, none of which are very satisfactory.
Great.
And it's called Why. It's actually by the same philosopher I was mentioning before, named Philip Goff. And he tries to basically propose or motivate kind of a novel version of kind of that's in between naturalism and supernaturalism, right? So he basically, so his like the upshot of his view, and he gives obviously a book-length argument for it, is that the laws of the universe have a purpose, right? That there is a purpose to the universe. That purpose isn't found in some sort of supernatural context of some sort of godlike purpose, but that nevertheless the universe is achieving a purpose as it evolves, right? And so he tries to go in between either just mindless mechanistic laws that are just computing the next state, tries to avoid that sort of more, say, depressing kind of sort of empty vision of the universe, without necessarily adopting a fully theistic view, where the universe is essentially a spiritual creation of some higher supernatural object, which a lot of scientists would sort of think you're loading in a whole bunch of extra metaphysical baggage that maybe you want for spiritual or metaphysical reasons, but are not motivated out of science. So he tries to take this narrow path, and he takes the fine-tuning argument very, very seriously, and he gives like a rigorous both scientific and philosophical case for this. And he has an important analysis of the fine-tuning problem that I don't think most people have understood, especially in the scientific communities, especially the folks in traditional physics that usually think this is a pretty solid argument. And he calls it the inverse gambler's fallacy. And it's a pretty simple argument, right? The idea is Imagine you with your buddy, you go into this, this big casino. You first walk in the door and you encounter a single guy at the craps table. And as soon as you come in, he just starts winning. He wins every single, he's stacking. He's basically just cleaning up. He's had an immense run of luck. Watching this guy, he's had the most amazing run of luck that anyone's ever had in any casino that you've ever been a part of. And then you turn to your friend and you go, wow, the casino must be busy tonight. And your friend goes, how can you possibly make that inference? We've only seen this one guy have an incredible string of luck. And you go, well, the only explanation for this guy having an incredible string of luck is that there must be thousands of people in this casino, and this guy is just the guy that happened to have an incredible string of luck. And that's basically and you would say, well, that's a fallacious argument. Like we haven't seen anybody else in this casino. There's just this one guy. How can you infer the existence of these thousands of other people when we've just seen this one guy having an incredible string of luck? And that is basically the same argument that folks in sort of the fine-tuning sort of anthropic space give for fine-tuning itself. That we happen to be in this universe that's very, very lucky. Therefore, there must be thousands or millions or in a multiverse of other universes where they're just less lucky people. We're the lucky ones. And that's a logical fallacy, right? You do not actually you only have the observational evidence that you have. And there's principles of reasoning, which is, always operate on the most specific evidence that's available to you. The most specific evidence available to us is that this universe is fine-tuned. We have to explain that fact. Appealing to an unobservable distribution of infinite, sort of other universes, is a logical fallacy, identical to this inverse gambler's fallacy. And so this is, I think an important, it's like pure sort of, and philosophers of probability, this is a pretty well-known argument, but it hasn't really translated into the scientific community, which just sort of has this kind of basic intuition that there's either a multiverse, there's many worlds in quantum mechanics, or the string vacua, that we're just lucky. We happen to be lucky. It's just an indexical fact about us. And I think that is committing the same logical fallacy as the inverse gambler's fallacy. And so then you have to then treat the fine-tuning of this universe seriously. You have to actually explain it without appealing to some infinite distribution of other possibilities, and we just happen to find ourselves in this particular one. And the way Philip Goff gives this explanation is actually what explains these parameters, is actually that the universe is evolving over time to achieve certain purposes. We might not be able to currently identify what those purposes are or have a precise formulation of what those purposes are, but appealing to, say, certain, what in philosophy is called sort of teleological principles, that there's a telos to the universe, that the laws exist for a reason, not for some supernatural, some God-given reason, but there is a purpose for the universe itself. The universe is achieving a certain purpose. He has a particular way of unpacking this in his book, which is that the purpose of the universe is essentially to create more novelty, right? More interestingness, essentially. And this actually, I sort of combine Philip Goff's approach with the folks that created assembly theory. I like to combine that with what I was talking about before in terms of this theory of causation, and then also what I talked about in previous podcasts, the sort of Stephen Wolfram, Jonathan Garrard sort of hypergraph idea. And there's similar views of the world as sort of a process of construction, right? We think about the universe as like this big empty space that's mostly static with a bunch of stuff in it. And so we think, well, why is this sort of empty, sort of big box here? I think the better way to think about the universe is actually like, all of that is constantly changing. It doesn't look like it's changing, but like empty space, the universe, everything is constantly changing. There's no such thing as like a static slice in reality. If you actually look at any given part of reality, it's extremely busy, right? Almost like every level down. There's always something happening. The universe is constantly changing. So this all reduces to my view like the problem of time, right? Like how like the universe isn't the static object. The universe is a process that's unfolding. Right? And so we are observers that see certain parts of that process unfolding, and we give names to different parts of those processes. We call this a chair, we call this a person, we call this a star, et cetera. But like the root of it is just a complicated process that's taking place, a big process of sort of unfolding, right? And so then you have to say, well, then there's all this process happening, right? And what is that process creating, right? What is that process doing, right? At least from our perspective. And the process seems like it's creating structure, right? It's creating more complex objects, right? We're a version of that. We're a part of the universe. We've been created by the universe as a process of construction, right? And this assembly, like we are some of the more interesting objects in the universe, right? So you ask, like, why would aliens come here, right? Like, why would they just come to some random rock around some random star in some random part of the galaxy? And it might be, well, actually, if you view the universe as creating interesting objects, right? And it just takes a lot of time. The universe can't just like snap its fingers. Like we have a particular we have a very high assembly number in the language of assembly theory. Like we've taken 4 billion years to be created, right? Every process from, the prokaryotic soup to us had to happen, right? The sort of the time chain of humanity had to like go a long way back in history. And that's a meaningful chunk of the universe's existence, right? Was like the evolution of what is now us and other objects on this planet that are complex living organisms. And that's like probably a relatively rare thing, not super rare in the universe, but like rare enough that it's really interesting, like when it happens. And you would be really interested if you were another similar sort of highly evolved object with a lot of complexity, what we would call intelligence. You would want to study those things. Like we obsessively study other similar objects like us, like dolphins and whales and baboons. There doesn't matter to our civilization. Like we get no real useful knowledge out of that. Maybe on the margins we understand like human origins by studying primates. But like, why are we obsessed with what are whales talking to each other about? Why do we care, right?
Because they communicate in a way that we don't, and we don't understand.
Because there's something fundamentally unique about them, right? There's some sort of process of evolution that is embodied in those physical objects, which we call dolphins, and their brains in particular. And they've evolved a whole pattern of communication, of behavior, of conceptual understanding, right? It's clear that they have some sort of what we would call concepts. We don't understand what those concepts are, but they must have some sort of concepts for family and, outgroup and danger or whatever. They're primitive concepts, but they could be relatively sophisticated. And, we as intelligences on this planet are really interested in trying to study those minds and their patterns of communication. So it seems like very odd to assume that other forms of higher intelligence would not have the same disposition as we do, right? I mean, it seems like a basic natural curiosity, right? That any complex object that's capable of understanding or trying to understand, create models of reality, would want to look at other things that might be, give it a new sense of perspective, right? The universe is not working from the same template everywhere, right? There might be basic rules that are applied, but those generate almost irreducible complexity. And so you might have, very different path-dependent trajectories to get to advanced, technological civilization.
So if these alien civilizations come from a star system or an evolutionary path that is a billion years ahead of us, and is infinitely more advanced, but has gone through the phase of retired the biological state and has been synthetic computer silicon based for hundreds of millions of years. They might just be interested in that there's a biological creature here. They may not have their planet, their civilization might not have seen biological creatures for any time. Might not even remember it. Might have evolved so past it. So the interest might be in the biological brain.
I mean, I think from a certain perspective, right, the perspective of assembly theory is that the distinction between a computational intelligence and a biological intelligence is just, it's kind of an artifact, right? Like what matters is this complex pathway of construction that leads to increasing and irreducible complexity that then imbues that object with, maybe novel emergent capabilities, right? Like higher order intelligence, et cetera. And so, you would be interested in studying anything that's as far along that trajectory, as you can observe, right? Those would be clues as to what the universe is doing, right? Like even a higher order intelligence that's been around for 1 billion years isn't like a god, doesn't know the secret to the future of the universe, right? That's like, in my model, everyone is inherently constrained. It doesn't actually have like the omniscience to know, well, what is the universe actually doing? So everyone is going to be, I think everything in this universe is basically facing the same conundrum, which is like, what is the universe doing? Why is it doing it, right? So I think even this future aliens that you have in mind here are fundamentally facing the same existential questions, right? Why are we here, right? They might have much more advanced technology, they might have answers to some of these questions about the nature of consciousness that we don't have, but they're always going to be searching the universe for clues, right? For what's the mystery of existence. I think that's like almost like that's where you go, right? Once you have no more scarcity, in your society, once you can zip around, you can explore the galaxies, got it great. Like at a certain point though, you're like, well, why are we here? And you're going to be looking for any clues you have. And maybe the only best clues are what is the universe constructing? Right? And what are the maybe patterns that you might be able to discern between the different patterns of complex objects the universe is creating, e.g., human minds as an example. And so that's just telling one maybe more abstract story. I think you could also tell a story that's more and more tangible for accounting for some of the UAP phenomena that we experience, which is has a lot more varieties, right? Like that isn't this abstract, cosmic searching, right? There seem to be very weird behavior, right, that we are observing here, right? There are specific objects flying around doing very specific things, interfering with nuclear capabilities, potentially engaging with particular parts of our population. Might be medical effects, biological effects, intentional or unintentional. And so, I'm not supposing that the sort of cosmic stance, the sort of larger philosophical line of inquiry is sufficient to answer the tactical question of who is here and why are they here? Right? I think those questions require as in traditional intelligence, you actually have to do a serious collection, right? If there's another actor or set of actors in our environment that are displaying certain behaviors, and you're trying to do two things in intelligence work. You're trying to discern intent and capabilities, right? And capabilities are a little bit easier to discern. Not easy, but relatively easier, because you can measure those things. You can see how fast can they go, what sorts of environments can they engage in, what sorts of platforms are they using, what's the characteristic morphology, what's the material design, what's maybe principles of propulsion are they using. Those are answerable questions, right, in theory, if you have the right data collection and materials to analyze. The question of intent is then a whole separate question, though. And that's probably, much more difficult to answer, because you might not actually be, when even in traditional geopolitical, contexts, assessing intent is very hard. Like the biggest question, probably, the top of the priority tasking for the intelligence, for the CIA in particular, is what is President Xi's intention with respect to Taiwan, right? Literally go into his prefrontal cortex and tell me what sorts of thoughts is President Xi having about Taiwan, and how are those thoughts changing week to week, month to month, year to year. Like that's what you're essentially trying to get to, right? As an intelligence service. Now, I'd be very surprised if the CIA had the ability to literally read President Xi's mind and discern that intention. So they have to use proxies for that intention. What has he said to his close advisors, right? What sorts of orders has he given? What sorts of capabilities has he instructed his military to have? What sorts of public statements has he given in private and in public to our leaders and other leaders around the world? And you try to create this mosaic that then you, in an intelligence, tradecraft, you say this is our current assessment of his intentions with respect to Taiwan. And very, terrestrial human question of intent for one individual is an immensely difficult question for us, right? For the most powerful intelligence apparatus on the planet. So I'm just setting expectations, right, for ourselves of if that is such a difficult problem, and it's clearly at the top of the priority list for our national decision makers and our intelligence community, then let's be somewhat humble about our ability to discern the intentions of some non-human intelligence where we have maybe less direct engagement with, right?
Well, it's like that. You've seen the film Arrival, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I love that film. As we get to, there'll be a bit of a plot. I assume everyone listening has seen it, but there's a bit of an exposed part of the plot here that towards the end of the film that they're confused. They believe, the intentions of these aliens is to start war, but war might not be a thing that exists even within, that species of alien, that non-human civilization, and they almost get it completely wrong. They almost declare war on them, and so we're always trying to imagine from our own framework, from our own human framework, our history, our how we've evolved and behaved.
Which is why we need to do a lot of work to come up with other frameworks, right? That's kind of my whole thrust here is you need, a set of frameworks that you put a lot of work into that come from all these different angles. You need to have a good sense of what the limits of current physics are and then be open to potential, maybe more heterodox frontiers of physical theories that are sort of outside the current canonical paradigm in, say, string theory. You need to have models of consciousness that are not maybe purely materialistic computational functionalism. You maybe bring in sort of a version of, say, property dualism, or my version of sort of structural dualism.